Hello, magandang hapon sa atin lahat. Naririnig ba ako? Yes, hello. Good afternoon at mapayapang hapon sa atin lahat. Nais ko po kayong i-welcome sa ating afternoon engagement na ito, ang Kapayapaan, Peace Education and the Role of NSTP in Peacebuilding. Hopefully, ready tayo sa isang makabuluhang talakayan dahil ready rin ang ating mga speakers. Diyos ko, lalo na sa panahong katulad ngayon, I cannot stress how important it is to talk about these matters. Wow, ako na nag-opening remarks. So bago pa ako magpatuloy magdaldal, ako po pala si Dolly Dolot, ang inyong butihing host para sa hapong ito. At dahil nga nasa webinar tayo, meron tayong mga palatuntunin na kailangan sundin, mga set of rules para maging smooth ang discussion ba. So ito po, una-una pay attention. Totoo po yan, sa kahit anong pangyayari, pay attention pa rin. At para makatulong din sa pakikinig ng bawat isa sa atin, panatilihin na lang po nating nakamute ang ating mga handheld. Opo. Tapos kapag may gusto po or nais sabihin, i-click lamang yung raise hand option dito po sa Zoom. At meron pong admin na lalapit sa inyo. Kapag di naman po kayo natawag, meron din po tayong second chance. Meron po tayong comment below, comment box or chat box na maaaring yung i-click tapos ilagay po ang mga inyong katanungan. At bago man po matapos itong webinar, sinasabi ko na po na meron tayong mga certificates na ipapamigay po sa ating mga attendees. Pero para po makuha nyo yung certificates, kailangan nyo rin po mag-submit ng evaluation forms. Okay po? So yes, and final reminder na lang ay itong Zoom po ay recorded. Yes po. So pinapaalam lang po namin sa inyo na recorded po ito. So sit back, learn, and enjoy. Para opisyal na umpisahan ng ating programa, nire-request ko po ang presence ng UP Diliman Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Maria Teresa Payungayong.
Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Naririnig po ba?
Yes po, ma'am. Magandang hapon din po.
Okay. For more than 18 months now, UP has been taking stock and gearing up to implement remote teaching and learning. Academic plans range from the mode of teaching to shortened academic calendar, program and course redesign, physical and academic infrastructure, student, staff, and faculty support, research and extension work, among others. We know this has been an extremely difficult journey for all of us. We understand how challenging it has been for all of us to be facing this pandemic, the new normal it presents, the changes, the disruptions, and even the preparations. Maraming araw at buwan na po tayong walang kapayapaan, ng isip, ng kalooban, dahil sa pangambang dulot ng pandemya. But we are so much looking forward to healing as one nation and recovering as a better generation. Exactly the theme of this year's National Peace Consciousness Month. For our part, NSTP Diliman and other Office of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs offices continue to implement projects and programs that cover service component, gender, and peace education, among others. This webinar, Kapayapaan, Peace Education and the Role of the NSTP in Peace Building, is one of these programs. We are honored by the presence of peace experts here, Assistant Professor Yasmi Ramoner, who is Acting Director of the Institute for Peace and Development in Mindanao, Dr. Herbert Rosana, Professor of Peace Studies and Dean of Graduate School of Bicol University, and Dr. Jasmine Nario Galase, Vice President for Academic Affairs of Miriam College, who will share valuable insights on the role of peace education in Philippine universities and the role of NSTP in teaching the Filipino people deliberate and sustained peace. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagpapaunlak. Finally, we welcome all participants from universities and colleges throughout the country. We are really honored to have with us today colleagues representing colleges and universities from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and Metro Manila. Let us join the nation in the celebration of National Peace Consciousness Month. Let us heal as one nation and recover as a better generation. Maraming salamat po at iba yung pag-iingat at kapayapaan sa ating lahat.
Yes, maraming salamat din po Dr. 𝐵𝗀𝐻𝐺, pag-iingat at kapayapaan para sa lahat. Opo, September nga talaga yung National Peace Consciousness Month. So yes, happy National Peace Consciousness Month po sa lahat. With the theme, no, na healing as one nation, recovering as a better generation. Pak! So bigyan naman natin ng linaw at daloy itong magiging diskusyon natin mamayang hapon. So para po dun sa pag-set ng expectations ba, pagbigay din ng direksyon sa daloy ng usapan natin ngayong hapon, tinatawagan ko po ang direktor ng NSTP Diliman, si Assistant Professor Dennis Kilala.
Maraming salamat. Vice Chancellor 𝐵𝗀𝐻𝐺, Ms. Cynthia Hernandez, Miriam College Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Jasmine Nario Galase, Bicol University Dean of Graduate Studies, Dr. Herbert Rosana, MSU IIT Director Yasmira Moner, fellow NSTP teachers, coordinators, directors, and students, good afternoon po. Higher educational institutions in the Philippines implemented the National Service Training Program after the signing of the NSTP law in 2002. The University of the Philippines implemented the NSTP in academic year 2002-2003. Aside from the law, the University of the Philippines Diliman, in 2003 was guided by the implementing guidelines of the UP system and of UP Diliman. In 2009, the IRR of the NSTP law was released. It enumerated the common module topics that need to be covered by implementing institutions. Last year, through a memorandum from the Commission on Higher Education, a more detailed common module was prescribed by 𝐀ED. Soon, 𝐀ED will be releasing the guidelines and procedures for the implementation of the NSTP, which would have some implications in delivering the common module. The IRR of the NSTP law stated that the topics that need to be covered by the NSTP common module are citizenship training, drug education, disaster awareness, preparedness and management, environmental protection, and other national security concerns. These were affirmed by the 𝐀ED Chairperson Memorandum on the revised minimum standards for the NSTP common modules. While peace education was not part of these topics, peace education was considered a specific module that could supplement the common module topics. So maliban po sa hangarin naming magbigay ng masikhaya tapat na serbisyo sa bayan, the reason why the NSTP Diliman office organized this webinar is that in the forthcoming guidelines and procedures for the implementation of the NSTP, peace education was added to the list of required common modules. So paano po ba natin to gagawin? For UP Diliman, peace education is also not part of the 9 topics that are included in the TATAC UPD NSTP common module. This webinar will be covering 3 broad topics: peace education and the 𝐀ED prescribed NSTP common module. Second, the peace education and the TATAC UPD NSTP common module. And also third, the peace education and NSTP peace projects. These topics will be discussed by seasoned academics. I have worked with them in the peace community, and I'm very glad that they have agreed to share their expertise and experiences with us in peace education. So after the 15-minute presentations of our resource speakers, we will also have 3 breakout groups. While you are free to choose the breakout session you will be attending, I would like to encourage the UP Diliman NSTP faculty members to join the peace education and TATAC UPD NSTP common module group. I also encourage the students to join the peace education and NSTP projects group. In the breakout session, we encourage everyone to actively participate by asking questions and possibly discuss practical concerns regarding the integration of peace education in the NSTP common module. So it can either be simply a Q&A or a Q&A session plus some brainstorming, for example. depende na po yan doon sa dynamics ng mga grupo natin. So some of the practical things that can be discussed in the breakout sessions are, number one, how do non-peace experts, yung mga NSTP students NSTP teachers natin, since most of them are not peace experts, how are they going to teach this module? Tapos po, may 25 hours lang po for the common module. What happens if we add one more topic? What should be the learning outcomes of this peace education module? What are the important elements of peace education module or the peace education project? Tapos po, how do we evaluate NSTP peace projects, including peace education projects? So these are some of the things that can be discussed in the breakout sessions. So Team NSTP hopes that you find this webinar meaningful and helpful. We have scheduled this Peace Consciousness Month as our small contribution to peace building in the Philippines. I hope that after the forum, you will be encouraged to contribute to peace in the Philippines by teaching peace through NSTP or by implementing peace projects as your NSTP projects. Maraming salamat po at peace.
Yes, maraming salamat din po, Professor Kilala, sa pagbibigay linaw sa lahat kung anong magiging daloy ng usapan mamaya. Yan. So alright, attendance check muna tayo. So right now, ako ay nasa Quezon City at nakikita ko sa comment at chat box natin na nanggagaling tayo sa iba't ibang lugar. Pero maraming Cagayan State University. Yun lang nakikita ko. Pero may prepare po kami, kaya ang dami po kasi talaga nag-register. Kaya nag-prepare kami ng mapa ng Pilipinas. At GNIS mapping po namin kung alin po dyan yung may mga participants at viewers tayo. So yes, nakikita nyo po from Batanes hanggang Jolo at isa sa Palawan. Marami po tayo ngayon at nagpapasalamat ako at naisipan nyo na ibigay itong hapon nyo, itong kaunting oras ng buhay nyo para dito sa Kapayapaan webinar na ito. Ayun, bakit ko nga ba ito pinapakita sa inyo? Kasi ito na ang first icebreaker po natin. Yang dami ng taong yan din po ang ina-expect naming magiging bagong likers and subscribers. Charot! Na aming Facebook at YouTube page. Kasi alam ko, hindi lang naman ito yung magiging tanging pagkakataon na magkakaroon tayo ng ganitong makabuluhang tsikahan. Kaya, if you want more, syempre naman, NSTP Diliman will give you more. At para ma-access nyo yung more na yan, punta lamang tayo sa Facebook page ng NSTP Diliman, ang NSTP Diliman Office Facebook page at www.facebook.com/updnstp, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, NSTP UP Diliman. Yes, right now po ina-expect kong nagkiklik na po sila. Charot! So yes, maraming salamat sa pagdalo. Maraming salamat sa inyong pag-share ng oras. Wag na tayo magpatumpik-tumpik pa. Without further ado, pakilala ko lang po ang ating first speaker. So our first speaker is a faculty member in the Political Science Department and current acting director of the Institute for Peace and Development in Mindanao of Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology. She has been working on peace building and conflict transformation since 2008 and has been actively engaged with community dialogues in the Bangsamoro peace process since 2015. So let us all welcome Assistant Professor Yasmira P. Monera.
Thank you so much to our very energetic and lively host, Dolly.
Thank you.
All right, before I start, allow me to pay my respect to the UP Diliman Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. 𝐵𝗀𝐻𝐿, to my fellow esteemed speakers, which I am truly honored to be joining and sharing this online space with them, Dr. Rosana and Dr. Galasek. And of course, to a good friend and fellow peace educator, Dennis. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you my close to a decade experience as a peace educator, and more so still, a student of peace building. Just a background, because I am working in Mindanao State University, Iligan campus, I would like to share that way before the implementation, I think, of the IRR, of this new, supposedly new 𝐀ED memo, the MSU system with its goal of mainstreaming cultural minorities in the national body politic, has already been integrating peace education in the common module of the National Service Training Program. And so that's why when Dennis asked me to share what we do in the MSU system, I did not have the second thought, because I would really like to learn as well the journey of my fellow peace educators and students of peace building as we traverse this very interesting and very difficult times in our nation's contemporary history. And so before anything else, I would also like to say Assalamualaikum, maayong hapon, magandang buhay sa ating lahat, kahit na tayo ngayon ay talagang kailangan pa rin, no, na dobling ingat dahil po nasa pandemya pa rin tayo. No? And so may I ask the technical team to screen share the slides. Maraming salamat po. So I prepared basically a very humble sharing of my experience as a peace educator and working right now with the MSU IAT Institute for Peace and Development in Mindanao, which is really quite challenging given the new context that we have to deal with, which is online peace building. And we know that peace building is about building actual relationships, and let's face it, there's really a limitation of digital peace building and online or remote teaching and learning at that. So may I request? The sharing? Okay, thanks, Karina. All right. So I think to begin with, there has already been a comprehensive background given by Dennis about this new concern on how do we integrate peace lens in the common topics, and there has already been this enumeration. And yeah, given that the common module, the time allotment for the common module is 25 hours, and like there are 3 components for the NSTP, particularly the Reserve Officer Training Corps, Literacy Training Service, and of course the Civic Welfare Training Service, where I teach for since 2015. And really, it's such a challenge because personally, I believe that peace through education is not something that is a mere course or an added topic, but it is something that we must internalize, that we must live by, because it is a value and it is a principle that we have to strive for on a daily basis. So I think it's always important that when we try to understand the importance of peace education, that it should go beyond the usual academic subject that we teach our students, because the noble intention really of the NSTP is to be able to mold a citizenry, especially among the youth, that is not just disciplined, but is also humane and is also deliberately conscious of their role as citizens. And you know, like in this day and age where it's so easy for us to claim our rights, but more often than not, we ignore our duties and responsibilities as citizens, and we owe that to our country. And I think that peace education is a very much needed value that we need to teach to ourselves and our students in order for us to be united as one nation. Next, please. All right, so just some like a bit of a reminder. Like I always start with my peace education class with reminding everyone that in this very noisy world, it's very important for us to listen, and not just listen, but actively listen. We are 423 right now in the chat, in this room. And may I ask, just to have like a temperature check, kindly press the heart button or thumbs up button, just so I can check that we are all here and alive and still very much present online. All right, thank you very much. Now, so just to perhaps this is also part of preparing for the breakout session later. It's always important that we do not just look into the slides, but also feel the online presence of our fellows and colleagues, because really it's very hard because we only see each other through the screen. But I think it's also important that we are conscious that we are doing this all together. We can agree to disagree, it's very important, but also ask questions that will not try to downgrade or cancel the concerns, no matter how small it is, because in building peace, every concern is, of course, very much valued. And as we go along with our sharing, and of course, I'm sure that we will be learning with each other, and in the spirit of really building a just, peaceful, and humane society. And feel free to clarify, summarize later on the points. You might wish to share your insights as well, and then feel free to share. This is a safe space. Thank you so much. Let's move on. Next, please. All right, so allow me to give you like a context of where I am coming from. I think to be a peace educator is something that is a personal journey that you really have to embrace, being a peace advocate, so that you could really teach peace through the heart and not just through the mind. And of course, when it's through the heart, it also touches one's soul. And this is something that I would like to share with you as I embrace on an everyday basis the struggle to really live a peaceful way of life. According to one of the peace guru, John Paul Lederach, in his book on, of course, it's you're familiar with this book on conflict transformation in divided societies, and I think it's pretty much applicable in the case of the Philippines. Peacemaking, meaning that as peace educators, we wish to really co-create peaceful spaces with our students in the classroom or in an online setup right now. We have to embrace it as a form of a personal transformation, of pursuing or raising awareness about the things that contradicts our human nature. And of course, it's a personal growth and a commitment to change at the personal level. It is always a common wisdom that the messenger or the medium is the message. How do we achieve inner peace so it is something that we can also share with our students and vice versa? As a peace educator and a member of a minority, for example, I strive to come to terms and acknowledge my own biases and transcend my parochialism, because some would say that I am a wounded healer. Being from Mindanao and having told by my own kinsfolk the painful animosity brought about by Marcos' dictatorial rule, and way before that, the history of colonization of the country, is such a very difficult reality from our not so distant past, and still is being experienced by a lot of our marginalized brothers and sisters in Mindanao, particularly in the Bangsamoro region. And so educating for peace is both a conscious and a deliberate choice to make amends, exercising one's personal will without imposing one's worldview or belief system, rather flourishing through diversity in a just and humane society. Debate is okay, but critical dialogue should also be an option. Peace isn't just about maintaining order, an absence of war and armed conflicts, rather proactive ways of promotion of human rights amidst the shrinking civic space we have right now in the country, and culturally appropriate, because we are such a very diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-faith, multicultural society, and gender and development initiatives that is also culturally sensitive, and where there is solidarity, respect, and environmental stewardship from both the local and, in general, global community. Peace is our everyday struggle. Peace is my jihad that I choose to do on a daily basis. Next, please. I also wanted to underscore at this point that peace is a relational process. And this one is something that when we teach peace education, it doesn't have to be like, just like we devote this particular time or period or class discussing peace education. Like, I believe that when we adapt peace education in our common module, it is cross-cutting different common, equally important topics on drug education, disaster awareness and preparedness, and responsible citizenship training. I mean, all of this is geared towards making sure that we are molding and co-shaping with the youth that civic consciousness in them towards the service of the country, and not just for themselves, but for the country and the globe. And so when we, as peace educators, it is also important for us to revisit what is the nature of our relationships within ourselves. What are our values, and what are the values that we also try to learn and share with our social groups, in the family, in our community, even in our workplace, and most importantly, the values that we share as a Filipino citizen is very important in peace building, because these relationships that we try to share and internalize, of course, affect the multi-layer, the multi-dimensional facet of peace building. Of course, when we start from the individual level, at the personal level, and it also affects the structural, the cultural, and even the spiritual aspect of our lives. And that's very important for most of Filipinos who are people of faith. I think religion, for example, is a very much important resource for peace, which is unfortunately something that there's this biased perception that religion divides rather than put people together in that shared aspect of solidarity and mutual love and understanding. And we need to revisit that one, to always ensure that we see our relevance and the importance of the perceived others, which is actually just the rest of us, human beings, and we are all interconnected, and we belong to the same race, which is the human race. Next, please. Okay, and I think the center of the NSTP is the promotion and to make sure that we are able to instill among the youth the responsible citizenship in a manner. You imagine that we are also molding a conflict-sensitive and young peace builders who are not just trying to say define peace, but they also lived the value of peace, that they are secure of their identity, and that they see themselves as something that is an important part of the whole. And because as peace builders, as peace champions, they also wanted to become part of a larger community that they share with the rest of their peers and the rest of the citizens. No? Peace education, I wanted to emphasize, is not just about expecting the absence of conflict and violence. We are not, as peace educators, we also don't want to romanticize the so much injustices that we're experiencing, acknowledging that violence could still be an option. No? But I think that the core value of peace education is that we can instill to our students learning the art and science of making non-violent and peaceful resolve to conflicts as the better alternative. So we do not impose something like violence or peace, but of course we have to also look at all sides of the world that we live in, and because peace and humane society can only thrive, or peace and sustainable peace of that can only thrive in a democratic society. Next, please. All right. So and also very importantly is to emphasize that educating for peace is systemic and structural. Like, from ourselves, we are also a social being, and so we can relate to other systems particularly the political system that we're in. And the greater social system, we have our complex web of relationship from our ethnic groups and of course to our nationality and our international affiliations, for example, like where there's a shrinking globe because we can now actually try to make friends with all the nationalities around the world because we have the social media, for example. Now is by another layer of root causes of conflict that we need to confront with, because I think, and probably you would also share your insights on this, that there are always that the social media, the online media that we have right now is also is a double-edged sword, and so we also need to kind of deal with this in a manner that is non-adversarial, and we need to, rather than just looking it as a very antagonistic or in a very cynical way, as peace educators, I think we must also understand these complicated relationships in our online community so we can say that there is a better alternative when we talk about lack of accountability in our digital spaces. Next, please. All right, so well, this is just something that allow me to mention, because I'm sure this will also be thoroughly discussed by the next speakers. But in MSU system, we are basically using different frameworks, particularly on the context that we're in. And so for example, in Mindanao, where there's really a need to not just look at conflicts at the international level, of course, there's the UNESCO framework, and the very important value where when we talk about peace building, the flower model says there's no hierarchy. Like you don't say human rights first, or like promote solidarity and dismantling the culture of war. You know, there's no peace because there's still a lot of injustices in our society. But we have to be systematic and systemic in trying to address the structural roots of conflict, or what Johan Galtung would say, let us address not just not just negative peace, but the promotion of spaces for positive space. And there, of course, the integral model for peace education. So what basically, in a nutshell, what are this? Just to quickly see the nuancing of this selected frameworks that I have choose to discuss with you. Okay, next, please. Okay, I have 2 minutes left. All right, so UNESCO framework touches on interpersonal relations between people, lacks a personal conception of peace though, but flower model emphasizes the need to live in a way that is not only sustainable, but in union with harmony with the natural world. And that is why the flower model is something that I use as a framework in my peace education class. The integral model for peace education includes health, which is, I think it's also very relevant in the context of this pandemic, that we to have peace, we should also have a healthy body, mind, and spirit. And so we can be able to share that space for enabling peace to thrive in the hearts and minds of our students, for example. And so finally, okay, so peace education is something that is transformative. Peace through education is providing safe and brave social spaces where we can exercise the moral courage to rethink about new ways of social and political change other than violence. So like say, for example, there's so much culture of impunity, but we do not just talk about the Rawlsian concept of very individualistic concept of justice, but restorative justice. That we do not just punish the offender, but also try to consider how do we reform the community that he or she is in, because probably his or her attitude is precisely because of the society that, or the community that he or she is in. And of course, I always make sure that in my class, dialogue is.
Nag-mute po kayo, Miss Yasmira.
Okay. All right. So just one more thing. I make sure that dialogue is privileged over debate in peace education, because dialogue is about seeing each other as equals, and it's very, very important that we emphasize the inherent human dignity of every individual, regardless of skin color or religion or political credo. And so we also exercise problem-solving learning assessments with our students in a collaborative rather than competitive way. So it's not the usual assessment where may pa-quiz ka, but really it's a teamwork, and you also promote the camaraderie of your students. And there's a lot of activities that the next two speakers will share, and so would really also happy to listen and share and learn from my fellow speakers on this regard. Thank you so much, and muli maraming salamat sa inyong active listening.
Thank you so much, Assistant Professor Yasmira Moner. Sobrang daming chika na sobrang nakakabukas ng damdamin at everything else. Aminin nyo guys, may mga something na tumindig sa balahibo nyo nung pinapakinggan nyo si Professor Moner. Kasi ako isa yun. Diyos ko, peace is a process that needs to be iterated nga. So, may nakuha ko na isang nagustuhan ko. Actually, yung synthesis ko dito, peace education is growth. Sa linyahan ng mga kabataan katulad ko right now, growth. Usong-uso yung growth na yan. So, feeling ko may connection doon. Peace education is growth talaga. So, yes, guys, thank you so much, Professor Moner. Bago tayo dumako, magkakaroon muna tayo ng minigame. Guys, buhay po ba kayo dyan? Of course, dapat lang. So, tawagin ko
sir.
Ay, thank you for that wonderful reply.
Yes,
sir.
Hello. So, yes.
Po, sir.
Ay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes po.
Yes,
Nice.
po.
Napaka-responsive naman ng ating mga viewers at participants. So, yes. So itong larong natin, tatawagin kong Guess the Song. At dahil virtual tayo, virtual din yung magiging hulaan. May papakita akong set ng emojis. Pagkatapos nitong slide, isi-signal ko sila. Tapos huhulaan nyo kung anong kanta ang tinutukoy ko. Iko-comment nyo na lang or i-chat nyo dito sa Zoom chat box yung inyong mga kasagutan. Okay po ba tayo doon? Isa lang to so paunahan tayo. So kung anong unang maisip nyo kaagad, i-join nyo na yan. At yung premyo to be announced. Pero meron. Sige ito. Go!
Happy birthday. Hindi ako sasama talaga na siya drama. Yung mga place cities.
May galit. So ayan, yan po ang huhulaan yung song. Ay! Okay, may nanalo na, bilis. Kasi madali lang talaga to.
Mapalang pangit.
Feel the word.
Sige. So may...
Wala naman lumabas na music there. Walang lumabas na
Hindi naman kailangan may music.
Okay. Yun, kanta Heal the World.
Yes, tama po yung Heal the World. So marami pong nakahula dahil madali lang po talaga. Kailangan niya lang paunahan. So makikita po ng ating admin kung sinong unang nag-chat at i-PM na lang po namin yung taong iyon. Congratulations at maraming salamat sa pag-participate sa ating minigame. Oh yes, dako na tayo sa ating pangalawang speaker. In fairness, grabe yung utakan ngayong hapon na. So, eto. Ang ating pangalawang speaker ay mayroong napakahabang years of experience sa peace process. So with over 25 years of research and teaching experience in the field of peace and security studies, our next speaker is a full-time professor and the former chair of the Peace Studies Department of Bicol University. He is also a recipient of training grants, both local and abroad, in human rights, gender equality, peace and conflict research, and general education. Kasalukuyan, he is the Dean of the Bicol University Graduate School. Let's all welcome Dr. Herbert B Rosana.
Good afternoon po, and I would like to acknowledge the Vice Chancellor of UP Diliman and also Assistant Professor Dennis Kilala for inviting me in this training. And actually, this is a surprise to me because I only taught NSTP once, maybe in my younger years, and it was never repeated again. But as far as peace is concerned, we have been offering in Bicol University. We have been pioneering this program for almost that was in 19 matagal na, 1990, 90s. The first time that we pilot a master's program was in 1993, and in 1996 we started a bachelor's program, and then eventually it developed to become to have a full straight program up to the PhD in Peace and Security Administration. And actually, it's very difficult to talk about peace education, because peace education is like a very big umbrella. And I think, and precisely, I mean precisely in the history of peace education, I think the main reason why it was never, it did not catch up with the other disciplines in terms of popularity, and sometimes it's very difficult to convince even university administrators to support the program because of the bigness of its umbrella. That's why I always emphasize that when you have a peace education, you must be able to define what do you mean by peace education, because peace is a value laden word. It has a lot of values in it, and you have to be very specific for people to be able to be convinced of peace education. And in Bicol University, there are so many twists in the way we implemented the program, because at first it was fully supported by the administration, and succeeding administration maybe had a flagging support for it, and we in the discipline have to work hard in order to convince the administration to support the program and to keep the program with us. And the one thing also with our curriculum is that it's not more on the integration of peace education, but rather it is more of offering peace education as a formal degree programs, because we have a bachelor, we have a master's, and we have a PhD program in peace and security administration. That's why when we first started offering the program, our Japanese friends were wondering, why are we offering a program, and why is it that the clientele of our program were the police officers and the military? That's why they were saying it's like a marriage of inconvenience. Why do we have to offer peace, and then later on we have to offer it to the military establishment and to the police? Because at first, when we had a curriculum, actually we got the original curriculum we took it from the United Nations Commission on Disarmament Education. And when we were crafting the program, we were saying, who will be our students, who will be enrolling in our programs? And at the time, the Philippine government they were transforming itself, especially the former Philippine Constabulary, the police was trying to reform. Yun yung panahon na mayroon silang tawag doon, nire-reform nila yung DILG law. And at the time, they were trying to emphasize that the police will have to be a professional unit of the government. And so sabi namin, since they were trying to professionalize themselves, and we find a way to connect with the police. And actually, it was General De Leon, who was the commanding officer of the Region 5 back then, who volunteered to help us and to select the best of his men, of his people, to enroll in the program. So doon nagsimula yung tie-up namin sa police and the PNP, and that's how we offer our peace education program. And in fact, General De Leon, when he retired, he was asked by the President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo to become the president of Mindanao State University in Marawi. And in fact, yung peace program nila doon, actually, sabi ni General De Leon, when he was a fresh graduate of the PhD Peace and Security Administration, then sabi niya, yung peace program daw na in-introduce sa MSU, actually, yun ang product ng kanyang, that was the product of his dissertation work. And even today, na nandun na siya ngayon sa Philippine Public Safety College, yun pa rin ang kanyang advocacy, yung peace and security. So now, let me may I be allowed to share my PowerPoint slides. I only prepared 5 slides. 5 lang yon, and because I don't want to because of the limited number of time. Okay. So in our quest for in order to be able to define the kind of peace program that we have, we say that peace is a state of well-being where the individual is free and situated in a condition surrounded with opportunities to develop his or her potentials toward self-realization. So when we speak of peace education, it should always start with the self, and that's the main reason why we emphasize that that human rights education is a very important part of peace education, because that is the foundation of peace, the well-being and the freedom of the individual person and the ability of the person to be able to realize yung kanyang potentialities. Kasi lahat naman tayo ng tao, especially if we read the Constitution, sabi doon, all men are born equal. And that is true. Equal maybe in principle, but in context maybe not. That's why our equality rests on the idea, on that constitutional idea, that all of us should be given that opportunity to realize our potentials, our being. That's why we are called beings, because we are born not as a perfect and complete person, but in the process of achieving our being. And our being is something which is ideal and which is something that we have to pursue. But oftentimes in our situations, we are hindered from achieving that kind of being because of certain factors in our political system or in our social system where we belong. Then we can also expand the idea of peace as a state of well-being of the human community, where every member of the community collectively work for and achieve the maximum level of happiness. And this is all connected in our constitutional idea of the freedom and the right of every person to seek for their own happiness. And as a community, we also have that duty, and we also have that pursuit of pursuing our own happiness. And I think that is also what we mean by peace. And when we talk of peace education, it is the means to help the individual and communities achieve their peace. And so translating the word peace, maybe we can think that it is something related to happiness and the realization of our potentials as individual persons. Now, if we want to translate peace education into the curriculum, we have to think from we have to use the three-dimensional paradigm of learning, which is you have the content, then you also have a set of values that you would like to develop on the individual learners, and then also the skills and they need and how they are going to apply their learning. Because sometimes learning is not only about content, but it is also has something to do with the kind of values that we have. And the most important thing also, especially when we evaluate the outcome, is how it is reflected in the way the person acts, or how the learner applies the learning. So ito yung mga itong mga nasa content, kinuha ko lang ito doon sa curriculum namin, because this is the paradigm of our curriculum paradigm. And the content, yung mga courses, mga subject na ino-offer, mga courses every year, every semester, will revolve around this topic. Like for example, human rights and human dignity. And that is a very core concept and core course of the peace education program. Then we also have the conflict resolution and transformation. Then we also have the multidisciplinary foundations of peace, because peace education as a discipline is an emerging discipline. It's a new discipline, And there are a few universities offering this kind of program. And it's also very difficult to find faculty members who are solidly in the peace discipline. But we used to have this multidisciplinary group of faculty members who are helping us with our peace program. Then we also have policy studies, because we should be able to translate our peace advocacies into policies, and we have to be very scientific about our policies, that our policies should be based on research, based on facts, based on data, and not just on opinions or perceptions. Then we also have courses on philosophy of peace and nonviolence. This is where we discuss the ideas of Gandhi, Leo Tolstoy, then also Martin Luther King Jr. So dito discuss kung ano ang how can we translate active nonviolence into something which is political. So sabi nga nila ang stereotype kasi ng mga tao, pag when you are a peace advocate, dapat tahimik ka lang. I think, but that is not the case with active nonviolence, because in active nonviolence we reject the use of violence, but we do not give up our struggle for a just and equal society. So kailangan pa ring makipaglaban tayo, pero yung pakikipaglaban na yun, pakikibaka na yun, hindi siya sa marahas na pamamaraan, kundi ay ginagawa natin yun because we recognize the inherent value of individual people, especially that even if we look at our opponent, that we see the value in our opponent, na yung opponent natin hindi siya ang kalaban natin. Actually, ang kalaban natin ay yung kanyang idea, yung kanyang mga ginagawa, hindi yung tao mismo. Kasi yung tao, ang bawat tao deserves to be respected, and life has to be cherished. Kasi nga life is precarious. Isang beses lang tayo nabubuhay sa mundo, and then we should spend it in respecting and loving each other. Then we also have courses on criminal justice, and then also comparative religion. And comparative religion, then we also have the sociology and philosophy of peace. Then we also have communications and mass media, then environment, climate change, disaster management, human security, gender equality, and knowledge generation. So actually ngayon, meron kaming nirevise namin yung curriculum namin sa undergraduate, and we try to fuse human rights and gender equality. Kasi we would like to put an emphasis that gender equality cannot be set apart from the overall concept of human rights, the rights of every human person, because gender equality, gender rights are human rights. So women's rights are human rights, and we are also trying to expand our conceptions of gender equality, that it would mean not only the rights of women as traditionally held by gender and development, but rather we would like to expand it to a more inclusive type of learning and advocacy that would include also the 𝐳 and also the LGBTQ+ and other things that needs to be put into this kind of discourse. Then these are the values that we want to develop in our students. The value of nonviolence, empathy. This is very important. Putting yourself in the shoes of another, especially this kind of value is very important, especially if you are teaching conflict resolution and transformation. If you are trying to solve a particular conflict, then you have to see that it is something to do with human relationships, and empathy is very important in human relationship, and it will help a lot in trying to transform that relationship, so that from being inimical, from being antagonistic, we try to find common grounds and to move forward. Then also the respect for human dignity, then respect for diversity. Yan, kasi although ang Pilipinas ay hindi naman tayo masyadong diverse compared to other countries. Hindi naman tayo masyadong ethnically diverse katulad sa ibang mga, halimbawa sa US or sa Malaysia. Pero since we are now in a global community, we cannot avoid interacting with people not within our country but outside of the country who have different ideas, different beliefs, and different perceptions. And we need to be able to respect that diversity. And connected with this is the ability for tolerance. So how do we tolerate? So tolerance doesn't simply mean allowing other people to do their thing, but rather tolerance is respecting what other people are doing. So kailangan natin yan ngayon, especially sa political climate natin ngayon, and political and religious climate na nauuso yung extremism, di ba, yung mga taong mga extreme yung kanilang mga mindset nila. Then we need to inculcate this value of tolerance, that we will be able to tolerate other people. We can sincerely believe in what we believe, but on the other hand, we should also have that strong capacity or foundation for tolerating others. Then justice, forgiveness, positive thinking, love for others, respect for the integrity of the environment, positive relations with the present world and with the beyond, and spirituality. Because we emphasize in our value system that spirituality doesn't mean only religion. Although religion can be a vehicle for spirituality, but even atheists or people who don't believe in God or would not belong to any faith communities, they can also have that kind of humanistic spirituality. Then when it comes to skills, we have to be able to see this, especially in our learning outcomes. Yung kanilang analytical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, and especially synthesis. Napakahalaga ng synthesis kasi dito natin na-synthesize yung mga readings natin, yung mga experiences natin, especially if we are doing field work and trying to integrate it into theory, then dun papasok yung capacity nila for synthesis. Then also yung competencies for in peace and conflict research. Kasi ang program kasi namin is yung bachelor's degree namin is BA. So the BA in peace and peace studies. So usually alam naman natin na pag mga undergraduates, siyempre ang focus nila is yung employment nila unless they have other plans, more on employment. So we integrate yung competencies nila sa peace and conflict research, because this is what is needed in the field. Dito sila makakahanap ng hanap buhay if they have this kind of skills with them. Then also we want them to develop their ability to organize communities, to go into the communities, and to expose them to the communities, for example, because there are courses that requires students to be in the community. Like for example, in one of the syllabus, students are taught the meaning of poverty. Why is there poverty? So we ask them to go to the community, to have a few days of immersion, and then maybe conduct some analysis and try to see what makes this community poor. So ito ang kailangan nilang mga skills na dapat ma-hone sa kanila, because not only as a student but in the future they will be doing this, and this is one avenue for them to be able to translate or promote their peace advocacy and their peace education. Then projects and community work. So ito ang overall schema namin sa aming curriculum. Then to contextualize our peace program, we have borrowed the paradigm of Johann Galtung, yung kanyang sinasabi niya na positive peace at saka negative peace. So pag sinabi natin na negative peace, it has something to do with the absence of physical violence, kasi actually ang government usually yung mga government, especially yung government natin, usually mga agencies natin, usually most of them are operating on the plane of negative peace. So halimbawa yung pulis at saka militar, sabi nila pag nagkaroon ng ceasefire, natigil yung barilan, magkakaroon tayo ng peace. Yung sabi naman ng mga welfare agencies natin, pag nabusog yung mga tao, nabigyan sila ng ayuda, then there will be peace. And that is actually an example of negative peace, because it does not answer the core of the problem. That's why we have to expand our concept of peace advocacy and our scientific approach to the study of peace towards this so-called positive peace. the existence of conditions or order of just relations in the aspects of society, politics, economics, and the environment. And actually, when I was looking at your itong common module ninyo sa Tatak UPD NSTP common module, actually sabi ko, how are we going to integrate peace in this module na halos lahat naman ng concept ng peace ay nandito na. So I don't know how it will be, I don't know ano bang aspect ng peace education ang gusto nating ma-integrate doon sa module. Kasi actually, itong mga ninyo, like for example, may module kayo sa understanding the self and others, human dignity and human rights, gender and development. Actually, these are the subtopics in peace education. So probably what you need to do is to come up with maybe a paradigm or maybe some important topics on peace na that is not present in your module. So iyan ang natin dapat makita doon sa and we have to always think na what is the opposite of peace. The opposite of peace actually is violence. Maraming especially sa mga brainstorming sessions, sasabihin nila the opposite of peace is war, diba? The opposite of peace is conflict, diba? Mga ganyan. Pero actually the opposite of peace actually is violence. It's not conflict, because conflict is conflict is the norm, because conflict is present in society. It is present in our lives. And it is part of our normalcy. Hindi magiging normal ang society kung walang peace, walang conflict. Ang key lang doon is that how do we resolve our conflict? Yun ang point ng mga nag-aaral sa peace. Yun ang point nila. How do we resolve conflict in such a way that it does not result to violence? Yun ang kailangan nating pag-aralan. Okay. So violence ang opposite ng from our point of view, we think that the opposite of peace is violence. And in our general curriculum, actually we pattern this from the paradigm of Linda. So I have met Linda maybe a couple of times, and we try to borrow her paradigm. Kaya kung makikita ninyo ang aming curriculum, lahat ng mga courses actually are nakapasok siya sa ganitong paradigm. So it answers the absence of war, the balance of forces, no structural violence, feminist and gender peace, intercultural peace, Gaia peace, inner and outer peace. That's why we also emphasize in our curriculum the study of inner peace, yung mga esoteric approach to the study of peace. However, it is being done from a philosophical point of view. So dito papasok yung tinatawag natin ng mga Oriental philosophy. So we have those kinds of, may mga courses kami na nakafocus sa ganung mga topic, mga something na which is out of the world, and pero very important siya na it should be included in the paradigm of the study of peace because it's very important. Kaya sabi nga natin, meron tayong tinatawag na inner and outer peace. Inner will refer to our spiritual resources, how we develop our spiritual resources, and also the outer peace. Ito na yung papasok yung outer peace sa environment, sa cultural, transnational, international, between states, within states, community, family, and individual. So ito ang paradigm na ginagamit namin for our curriculum. And then how do we contextualize our peace education in the Philippines? So ito lang ginagawa namin, sinusunod namin, tinitingnan namin yung mga official policies of the Philippine government, beginning from the time of Cory Aquino until the time of Duterte. Kasi sa panahon ngayon ni President Duterte, meron siyang tinatawag na the whole of nation approach in order to end local So kumbaga yun ang kanyang ito yung present advocacy ng programa ng gobyerno to end local communist armed rebellion. Then meron din siyang tinatawag na Philippine Development Plan. So we try to anchor our trusts and our outcome in this Philippine Development Plan of 2017 to 2022. At meron din sila tinatawag na Ambition 2040, which represents yung mga adhikain ng mga Pilipino, yung kanilang mga pangarap sa buhay na gusto nilang mangyari. And these are the things that ito ang tinitingnan namin. We always try to we revise our curriculum, we revise our syllabus by taking into consideration the different programs of the government. Sometimes we also critique this kind of and because we always believe in constructive dialogue, even with people whom we do not agree with. That's why there was even a time that our school was also tagged as one of the producer ng producer daw ng recruitment ng communist Communist Party at saka ng NPA. Pero actually na-realize nila ngayon kasi I attended one lecture, parang may isang parang isang government official na sinasabi niya parang mistake daw yung yung pagre-red tagging, parang it's a wrong approach, maling approach. And I think that this kind of programs of the government are kumbaga marami siyang ins and out na siguro because nagsisimula pa lang sila and maybe they are not able to see everything from a holistic perspective. So na-realize din nila yung kanilang mga pagkakamali, and sometimes in forums and in many discussions and when we are invited, we always emphasize all of this, and we try to extend our advocacy. That's why sabi nga doon sa sometimes there are even times when kami na ang nagpipilit na ma-invite. Sabi, why don't you invite us? 'Di ba yung mga discussion nila sa LCAP, 'di ba yung mga tawag doon yung mga cluster nila. Sabi ko, bakit puro lang yan line agency? Bakit walang higher education diyan? So sana ako maisip ninyo na may higher education din, at sana ma-invite din ninyo kami. We are willing to be invited, and we are willing to help you even pro bono without anything, because we want to be constructively engaged with our peace advocacy. So I don't want to take much of the time because there's another speaker, and just I would like to take note na habang binabasa ko itong Tatak UPD NSTP common module ninyo, halos nandito na lahat ang tinatawag natin na component ng peace education. What is important here is kailangan magkaroon siya ng anong bang tawag doon. Paano nga siya isisingit doon sa anong aspect ng peace education? Siguro ang magiging dito ninyo is ano bang topic ng peace education ang gusto niyo maidagdag dito? Kasi actually nandito na yung mga components ng peace education, yung mga elements ng peace education. Nandito na sa module na to. So maybe you will have to look for a specific topic na pwede ninyong idadagdag doon sa in order to complete the picture. Kaya lang kailangan mayroon kayong framework. Kasi naranasan namin yan actually when we promoted the School of Peace. Actually 5 years ago, we have this project School of Peace supported by the UNDP, and we try to introduce the holistic peace education sa isang school. And nakita namin doon na there's no need to put an added burden on the teachers. There's no need to put an added items on the curriculum. What is needed is to provide a framework, a clear framework na intelligible siya, maiintindihan siya ng mga teachers, maiintindihan ng community, ng mga parents, and once na naintindihan nila yon, they will be able to channel and appreciate the process. Doon na nila nakikita yung purpose why there is a peace education. Yung pala, kasi minsan dahil sa kawalan ng paradigm, sa kawalan ng framework, hindi na uunawaan ng mga tao, hindi nila na-appreciate. Kaya ito bagang mga project ng government natin ngayon, halimbawa yung paggawa ng mga kalsada sa mga barangay, paggawa ng mga mga tulay sa mga liblib na lugar, sasabihin nila na ito daw ay peace advocacy nila. Sabi ko, sa anong framework nakalagay yan? Naiintindihan ba ng mga taga-barangay na yan ay para sa kapayapaan or what? Kasi pag nilagyan mo ng kalsada at tulay yan, wala namang, kung hindi alam ng mga tao ang kahulugan yan, okay lang yun sa kanila. they will say thank you, pero hindi nila alam na yung pala ang ginagawa mo. So therefore, kung tayo ay may peace program, kailangan meron tayong malinaw na framework, kahit simpleng framework lang, para at least naiintindihan ng mga mag-aaral, ng mga learners and the teachers na yung pala ang direction nila. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share with you. Maybe I will not be able to meet your expectation, but I'm trying my best to be able to share with you some of my little learning that I have about peace education. So, salamat po.
Hindi sir, maraming salamat po sa inyo. Sobra po sa enough ang binigay niyo pong mga insights ngayong hapon na ito. Actually, ang dami ko pong nalagay na quotable quotes, pero baka maging cheap na po yung usapan kung ganyan. So yes, totoo, kailangan kasi sa proseso ng kahit anong bagay din naman, meron tayong teorya at praxis. Kumbaga, emerging field pa rin naman kasi yung peace education. So kapag nabigyan pa natin ng mas maigting na pag-aaral ito, mag-channel through din yan sa praxis ng tao, sa proseso ng paggawa. Yon, maraming salamat Dr. Herbert sa iyong napakabuluhang chika po. Ngayon naman guys, kumusta tayo?
Okay
naman
po, sir.
Okay lang po.
Okay lang
Okay lang po.
sir.
Okay lang
Very
po.
good.
Okay lang po.
Hey,
Okay lang po.
sandali, pwede nyo na
Okay lang
i-shot.
po.
Happy.
Nice,
Peaceful po
nice.
kami, peaceful.
Grabe yung peaceful. So yun, so ito ang gagawin natin sunod para pamgising. Kumbaga, di ba may sinasabi si Sir na synthesis. Ngayon, kalikutin naman natin ang utak natin para sa isang mini game ulit. I-synthesize natin yan mga natutunan natin sa first two speakers. Alright? Wow, ang bilis. May synthesis ka agad. So madali lang ito guys. Fill in the blanks lamang ito. So meron ako ipapakita sa inyong quote at ikukompleto nyo ito base sa kung anong naiintindihan nyo. So okay, ito. Flash quote. Walang kapayapaan kung blank. Yeah, so i-comment nyo lang din below yung mga kasagutan nyo. I-comment nyo sa YouTube, i-comment nyo dito. Ay, ang gaganda. Ano to? Walang kapayapaan kung walang pagkakaisa, kung conflict, kung may karahasan, kung walang kalayaan. Pagkakaisa, pagkakaisa, pagkakaisa. Walang kapayapaan kung may karahasan. Totoo naman po. Walang kapayapaan kung pagmamahalan. Follow pa rin po natin yung syntax ng grammar. No? Kung hindi nagkaintindihan, totoo naman. Walang karahasan. Yes. Actually, wala naman po mananalo talaga dito. Titingnan ko lang din kung may mga, kung kaya nyo pang masynthesis yan. Kahit sa isang word lang. Pero syempre may mas maigting pa tayong pagproseso ng mga natutunan natin today mamaya. So yes, marami pa rin nagsasalita, which is a good thing. Pagkakaisa, unity, kalayaan kung may karahasan. Walang komunikasyon, totoo po yan. Pagmamahal, kung walang pera, nakakaloka yung kung walang pera. Kung walang magbibigayan, pag-uunawaan, takot sa Diyos. Ayun, maraming salamat sa inyong active participation. Grabe, time check, it is 3:20 p.m. Usually sa oras po na ito, well, wala, work from home. Kaya po, palakpakan naman natin sarili natin muli, kahit virtual palakpakan lang para sa inyong pag-stay at active na pakikinig. Yan. Ready na ba tayo sa ating third and last speaker para sa hapong ito? Huwag na kayo sumagot. Alam kong ready na kayo. So para naman sa pag-introduce sa ating third and powerful speaker, our third and last speaker for this afternoon's engagement is the Executive Director of the Center for Peace Education and a professor at the Department of International Studies in Miriam College. She has co-authored publications in peace education, conflict resolution, arms control, and women. The president of Pax Christi Pilipinas and the chair of the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines Justice and Peace Education Committee, and a member of the board of the Philippine Council for Global and Peace Education, and currently leading the Peace Education Network. Wow, dami noon. Palakpakan na may kasamang hiyawan, virtual hiyawan lang para sa ating third and last speaker, Dr. Hasmin Nario Galase.
Thank you very much, Dolly. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you super all
Very
right.
good. So good afternoon, Dr. 𝐸𝐚𝐬𝐚, Professor 𝐸𝐴𝐬𝐚, my co-resource persons, and all the participants in the Zoom room and the ones watching on YouTube. So this afternoon, I was actually asked to speak about peace education, what it is, why is it important, how do we integrate it into the NSTP, and what are some of the projects that we can actually undertake within the NSTP program. So I'm very happy actually to share my thoughts about these questions that were given to me by Professor 𝐸𝐴𝐬𝐚. So I was going to start with this question, but then the game a while ago already spoke of this, and I sensed from your answers in the chat box that you associate peace with understanding, with unity, with love, with justice, which is wonderful. Because, before, peace was just, understood as merely the absence of war, or the absence, of violent conflict. But you see, it's also actually what we call the presence of justice, the presence of well-being and just relationships in the social, economic, political, and ecological sphere. So when we say peace, we just do not say the absence of violence, but it is also the presence of well-being. And we say well-being, we also talk about structural well-being, social-cultural well-being, and ecological well-being. And I'm going to expand on that a bit more in a bit. So why is peace education important? Because many people die every day, from armed violence, including armed conflict. The Institute for International Strategic Studies, for example, has placed death at 1,441 daily, from various forms of armed violence. In the Philippines, these are the threats to peace. And these, was what communicated to us by people in communities from Luzon to Mindanao when we did regional consultations some years back. In schools, these are the forms of direct violence our students experience. So peace education is important because people die and suffer from hunger and poverty. So there is no peace when there is hunger, when there is poverty. So peace education is also important because each day throughout the world, people are killed or hurt because of hate, as they differ from the rest in terms of ethnicity, religion, sex, ideology, gender, and class, among others. So in schools, these are some forms of psychological violence that our students experience, sexual violence, verbal abuse, bullying, cyberbullying that now we're doing online. So in some, why do we teach peace? In some we teach peace because, it's the practical thing to do. It can help save lives. As I've mentioned a while ago, many people die from armed conflict, from crimes, from hunger, from hate. So if we teach peace, then we can help save lives. And that's really a very good incentive, for us teachers. So why teach peace? Because it's a political and legal obligation. So nations, through various human rights instruments, crafted in the United Nations, have affirmed their commitment to the protection and promotion of human rights and human dignity. So we need to honor our commitments to the Filipino people and the community of nations. And this is why NSTP promotes civic engagement, because, the government and all of us, have to honor those commitments on human rights and peace. Why teach peace? Because, major religious traditions teach their flock the values of respect, love, nonviolence, justice, and oneness of the human family. Therefore, it's an ethical imperative, even if you don't believe, even if you don't have a religion, because humanists also stand, for the building of a more humane society through ethics based on human values, such as kindness, love, and compassion. So now that I've talked to you about, what is peace and why is it important, I'd like to now share with you what peace education is. So peace education is education that promotes a culture of peace. So it cultivates, the knowledge base, the skills, the attitudes and values that seek to transform people's mindsets, attitudes, and behaviors that have either created, tolerated, or exacerbated violent conflicts. So, and what is a culture of peace? So you can see here on screen that it's a culture of a way of life that promotes these dimensions and operative values, as you see on screen. So when Professor Kilala was talking about the total UP, the NSTP common module, I saw that, the understanding the self, was actually part of it, as well as promotion of human rights, gender equality.
Screen is not shared, please.
Oh.
Wala pong screen.
Okay, I will stop and then share it again. Okay. Okay, is it sharing now? Can you see my screen now?
Nag-share na po siya.
Okay.
Opo.
It's
Yes,
now
po.
okay. So what did I miss? Did I
Hindi
is the
pa po.
only thing I missed?
Wala pa, blank pa lang.
Blank?
Screen. Yep.
I want
Loading pa po. Wait lang po. Kami na po,
It's wait,
kami na po
it's loading.
magpo-prompt.
Okay,
Yes po,
let me
ma'am.
know. I'm really sorry about that.
It's okay po, ma'am.
I wonder why. So, but what was the last thing that you saw on my screen?
There's nothing, ma'am. Wala talaga. Walang screen.
From the very beginning,
yes,
there was
yes.
nothing?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
there is.
Oh, that's really sad.
Wait.
I wonder why. So should I do that again? Okay. Can you see it now?
Oh, ma'am. Not yet.
Okay.
Not
It
yet.
now?
Ma'am, is it okay po na iulit na lang po natin yung i-stop share po, tapos reshare na lang po natin?
I-reshare natin from the very beginning.
And we can we can move forward na lang din po, pero stop this current sharing and then share another na lang din po. Para ma-restart.
So I will repeat. So
Yes.
I will stop. Okay, I will stop. So I
Yes,
stop
po.
sharing.
And
And then I will now start broadcasting. That's what
Yes,
I'm going to do.
We can see your camera is facing you.
Yeah,
Not the
but
screen.
I want
Yes.
you to see the screen. So okay. So I'm sharing the content now. Let me know if you're seeing my screen.
Not yet po, ma'am.
so-
Kindly
You can
share
see
na.
your camera.
Sir, ako na lang po bahala.
What about this one?
Yes, we can see it now po.
That's wonderful.
Yes,
So
yes.
earlier, so you missed all of these that I'm showing right now. You missed all of this.
Sadly, yes po, ma'am.
That I showed the definition of peace, and I shared with you why peace education is important, and I told you about the number of people killed on a daily basis, because of violence. And I talked to you about the different threats to peace, that we were able to harvest when we did regional consultations, as you can see on screen. I talk about the different kinds of violence that people experience, within the school. I talked about, hunger and poverty as forms of violence, and that a lot of people die every day because of hunger and poverty. And I also talked about social-cultural violence, that a lot of people die on a daily basis because of hate, because they differ in terms of ethnicity, religion, sex, ideology, gender, and class, among others. And I also showed this a while ago, that these are the forms of social-cultural harassment or violence experienced, by students in the classroom, including bullying, verbal abuse, sexual violence, and cyberbullying now that we're doing online. So I also mentioned, the importance of teaching peace. Why should we teach it? Because it's practical, because we can help save those lives lost from hunger, from violence, from armed conflict, from hate. And I said that we should teach peace because it's a political and legal obligation, because we have a commitment to the community of nations to protect and promote human rights and human dignity. And I think I stopped here. I said that when Professor Kilala was actually talking about the total UPD NSTP common modules, all of these are actually there, in the total UPD NSTP common module. I also talked about teaching peace as an ethical imperative, whether you are a believer or not, because even humanists stand for the building of a more humane society through ethics based on human values such as kindness and compassion. So what is peace education? It's an education that promotes a culture of peace and on the next slide, these are the dimensions and operative values that are part, of the culture. That there's going to be peace when you understand yourself, when there's personal peace. There is peace, when there's human rights and democracy, when there is poverty eradication and development. There is peace when there's intercultural understanding and solidarity, when there is no war, when, the environment is sustained and protected. So this is how we get to peace, when this operative values and dimensions are present. And so these is the schema developed by the Center for Peace Education in Miriam College, listing the key knowledge areas, skills, attitudes, and values that are integrated, to peace education. So these are, this list is not exhaustive. But I hope that you will, be able to use this when you do your syllabus, on peace education. So that's the KSA, as you know, because all of you are teachers. So I just like to emphasize many of these points. So there are important peace concepts that we can teach our NSTP students. And number one is respect for life. I'd like to emphasize this: the respect for the life of each human being and respect for other life forms in nature. All lives matter, all lives. The second one is non-harming, and this is the use of non-violent methods to obtain justice rather than through an eye for an eye dictum. Can you imagine if we do an eye for an eye? The whole world will be blind, right? So non-harming is the use of non-violent methods like the problem-solving approach and negotiation in solving conflicts. In peace education, we also teach, the oneness of the human family. And you mentioned this in the chat group a while ago, unity. All humans should be regarded as sisters and brothers. We all have a common home, planet Earth, and a common future. Because if you treat the other person as a brother or a sister, you're not going to kill him or her. So also, we would like to emphasize the teaching of human worth and dignity, the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. We can never have peace, if human rights are not protected and promoted. We cannot have peace if basic human needs cannot be fulfilled, when people cannot participate in decision-making matters. We also would like to emphasize that in peace, we teach tolerance. And tolerance is not toleration. There's a difference between the two. Tolerance, as defined by UNESCO, is the respect, acceptance, and appreciation of the diversity, of various forms of human expression and culture. So you may be a Muslim, you may be a non-believer, but we respect each other. You may be, lesbian, gay, transgender, a woman, man, but we respect each other. Whatever your religion is, whatever your culture is, nationality, there should be respect, no? It's a rejection of a sense of superiority, that I'm better than you because I am this, because I'm rich and you are not. So, that is part, of building a peaceful culture when respect and acceptance is there. And also, of course, the support for the equitable distribution of wealth and resources. When there's economic equity, there can never be peace in a society where there's a tragic gap between the rich and the poor. And of course, there's going to be peace when we care for the earth, when our actions ensure, sustainable development, the well-being of the earth's ecosystems, that can meet the needs of the future generations. And there will only be peace when there's gender equality, when we value the right of women, and all the others, in between, to enjoy equal opportunities with men and to be free from abuse, exploitation, and violence. Now, how do we teach peace? It's very important that the manner or the methodology we employ is consistent with the principles of nonviolence and peace. So therefore, when we teach it, we're not authoritarian, we're not competitive. It should be cooperative in approach. It should be holistic, taking care of the mind, the heart, and the hands. It should be humanist. We should be caring for others, for our students. It should be dialogical. There should be a space for our students to speak to us. It should be participatory. How do we teach it? These are some strategies for you. So you can discuss women and men of peace, like Jesus and Gandhi and Rosa Parks and 𝗍𝗵𝗶. You can use films and poems and stories and songs to teach peace and respect for diversity. We can actually ask our students to research on women's participation in peace processes. We can actually ask our students to interview people who help prevent conflict or were in nonviolent resistance. We can do textbook analysis, ask your students to look at textbooks and see there, what are some images, what are some words, that do not reflect gender equality or are that, are actually violent, and we can ask our students to write people who can stop violence, the security sector, the members of the cabinet, and we can also ask our students to put up exhibits, on people of nonviolence and invite resource persons in your classes who are from different ethnic, socioeconomic, and religious backgrounds. Invite Professor Monera, for example, to talk about her work, on peace, and then provide opportunities for students to interact with people they perceive to be different. So, for example, the people who are called special, provide opportunities for students to listen to them or play games, for example, changing violent idioms and phrases to non-violent ones. I'll give an example. We say, for example, let's light two candles. Let's hit two birds, with one stone. That's kind of violent. You hit a bird with a stone. You can change that into you can light two candles with one matchstick. We can also identify songs that are violent, and that are teaching us actually peace. For example, Isang Pipit. Are you familiar with Isang Pipit, the song? If you want to sing with me, it goes like, may pumukol sa pipit sa sanga ng isang kahoy at nahagip ng bato ang pakpak ng munting ibon. Dahil sa sakit, di na nakaya pang lumipad at ang nangyari ay nahulog, ngunit parang taong bumikas. Mamang kay lupit, ang puso mo'y di na nahabag. Pag pumanaw ang buhay ko, may isang pipit na iiyak. So actually that song, which is a song from yesteryears, is telling us about the value of life. That if you kill someone, may isang pipit na iiyak. May isang taong iiyak, may anak na iiyak pag tayo may pinatay na buhay. So we can actually ask our students, to write songs or to research on songs, reflecting those messages. So I go now to NSTP and peace education. So NSTP is a mandated course, as you know, per RA 9163. It aims to enhance civic consciousness and patriotism, and peace education may be integrated in the civic welfare training service component. And integrating peace and its major concepts of respect, nonviolence, human rights, gender equality, and environmental sustainability are consistent with the principles embodied in the law. Hindi po kayo lilihis dahil ito po ay tinatawag nating civic welfare training. So peace education in NSTP may provide an opportunity for learners to understand a country's economic, political, and socio-cultural situation, particularly as it affects peace and development. So I share here, some sample as a sample course outline for our NSTP in Miriam College. So the sample objective here is to examine the role of the youth in promoting gender equality, environmental sustainability, and peace building. Sample project for students here would be the creation of publicity materials or infographics on violence against women, gender inequality, the role of youth in peace building, and the preservation of the environment. So what are other possible peace projects for NSTP? Those that will help cultivate peaceful attitudes and dispositions and address threats to peace, such as an anti-bullying campaign, ask your students to do letter writing projects to students who differ in religion, ethnicity, or nationality. So for example, if not many of your students are Muslims, then they can write letters, to students in a school that's dominated by Muslims, then in that way, you are developing or building friendships of understanding, between two cultures. You can also celebrate Interfaith Harmony Week by inviting people of different religions in a webinar. For example, celebrating the Mindanao Solidarity Week and raising awareness on the peace process in Mindanao or the situation in Marawi by holding the Nuclear Abolition Week, which is on the 1st and 2nd week of August, and highlighting the impact of the nuclear bombing in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the efforts of organizations in ending nuclearization by participating in the Wear Orange Day, which is held on the 1st week of June, and highlight those who died from gun violence and why arms proliferation must be addressed, or celebrating the International Day of Peace. In celebrating or commemorating these days, students may organize public actions, concerts, open mic, events, poetry reading, prayer rallies, fundraisers, etc. Our students, for example, in Miriam College have tried selling lugaw, ice cream, and cupcakes to raise funds for our partner communities in Mindanao. So these projects can also be done online. Students may also organize capacity building projects, teach other students or urban poor communities on important peace skills such as conflict resolution or nonviolent communication, or students may want to engage in an advocacy project such as lobbying. They can visit the Senate or Congress to lobby peace issues. During the pandemic, they may use social media to reach out to the lawmakers through Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And as armed conflicts claim lives, destroy property and livelihoods, displace people, and disrupt schooling, students may want to organize projects that will show support, for the peace process. That's all I can say in 15 minutes. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow. Oh my God. That was so loaded. Yes, that was so loaded, and that's, sorry for the lack of a better term. It was a lot, and that a lot is very loaded. I can't say. Well, we are constrained by our time, but rest assured, the presentation that was cut off earlier, everything was very succinct, descriptively, and so it was very much understood by, I believe, everyone. Yeah, I can see all the claps here in the chat box. And now I'm speaking in English. Oh my God, I'm fluent na rin. Charot. So yes, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. 𝐷𝐸𝐻 for that very, very, very wonderful talk about the state of peace and peace education as initiated by Miriam College. Yes. So at this point, meron po tayong question and answer portion. So ito pong question and answer portion natin. Magkakaroon tayo ng konting tweak dito dahil napakarami po natin. Yes. So ito po ang ating instructions. Magkakaroon tayo ng 3 breakout rooms. So dito sa 3 breakout room, meron tayong main meeting room, ito pong room na ito. Tapos magbubukas din kami ng 2 pang Zoom meetings. Ilalagay po namin yung link dito sa ating chat box. Ilalagay po yung link din dun po sa ating YouTube comment section. Yes, yung pong additional rooms na yon, dun po papasok sina Dr. Herbert Rosana at si Professor Muner. At si Dr. 𝐻𝐸𝐻. Bali, ang matitira po sa main meeting room ay si Assistant Professor Muner, at yung mga pupunta po sa ating separate Zoom meeting rooms ay si Dr. Herbert, na may link po na ilalagay namin sa comment section at sa chat box. At meron din po ng kay Professor Dr. 𝐻𝐸𝐻. Okay po, so bali, yasahan ko na lang na lumipat po yung mga nais magtanong kay Dr. Herbert, or kung meron din po silang katanungan kay Dr. 𝐻𝐸𝐻. Yes, punta na lang po tayo dun po sa mga breakout room links. Nakikita nyo na po ba yung link?
Not yet.
Link. Hello po, yes. Linking. Ayun, yes po. Apo, kasi may mga ilalagay po na link ang ating mga administrators. Tinatawagan ko po ang ating mga administrators. Pasend na lang po dito ng link sa Zoom chat box na ito para po, yan din po. Meron dito YouTube live monitor. For Dr. Rosana, ito po ang link. Sa may mga nais po itanong kay Dr. Rosana, punta na lamang po kayo dito sa link na nai-post dito sa chat box natin ngayon. Para naman po kay Dr. Nario, meron din po ditong isang link. Yes. Bale, wala na po yung mga speakers natin ngayon sa main meeting room aside from Assistant Professor Muner. So, yon. And yes. So, yeah, bigay ko na po itong oras na to para kayo ay lumipat sa mga rooms na nais nyong puntahan. At kung gusto nyong may itanong kay Professor Muner, manatili lamang sa main meeting room na ito. Para dun po sa ibang speakers, punta na po tayo sa ating Zoom link. Okay po? And break time. Lipat na po tayo.
asa sa iba kundi sa iyo at sa akin ang simula ng pagbabago. Panahon na para bumangon at paikutin muli ng tama ang mundo. Suliranin ng ating lipunan, unti-unting magagawan ng paraan. Sa bagong siglo na ito ng ating mga buhay, tayo'y magsama-sama. Bigyang liwanag ang daan, maging gabay sa lipunan, kailangan ng iyong kamay.
Halika na kapwa Pilipino, halika na kapwa 𝐬𝗲𝗄𝗏.
Taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo. Ang armas mo ay ang iyong natutunan laban sa karahasan. Ang iyong sandata ay serbisyong sasakip sa mamamayan mula sa kahirapan. Halika na, kapwa mandirigma, magtagumpay kapwa 𝐬𝗲𝗄𝗏. Taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo.
Huwag mong iasa sa iba kundi sa'yo at sa akin ang simula ng pagbabago.
Huwag mong iasa sa iba kundi sa iyo at sa akin ang simula ng pagbabago. Panahon na para bumangon at paikutin muli ng tama ang mundo. Suliranin ng ating lipunan, unti-unting magagawan ng paraan. Sa bagong siglo na ito ng ating mga buhay, tayo'y magsama-sama. Bigyang liwanag ang daan, maging gabay sa lipunan, kailangan ng iyong kamay.
Halika na kapwa Pilipino, halika na kapwa 𝐬𝗲𝗄𝗏.
Taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo.
Yes po, yes.
Malakas kasi po yung sound, hindi ko po kayo. May tanong kasi po ako sa inyo.
I think
Hello po,
hindi
hello
po
po.
ata nag-start ang Q&A. Dali, hindi pa nag-start. No?
Hindi pa po, hindi pa po. Opo.
Oo.
Pasensya na,
Kasi
tapusin lang po natin yung
May
song.
3 breakout rooms kasi. So,
Opo. Pinapakompleto lang po natin. Opo.
Ganun po ba? Kasi I will stay dito lang sa natin, sa main.
Sige po.
Opo.
Napakatapos
Kasi
na lang po ng kanta, mag-aano tayo.
Kasi ang concern ko kasi sa talk ni Ma'am Moner.
Sige po. Mamaya, unahin na po natin kayo.
Sige po. Thank you.
Ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani. Sarap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang pag-asa ay ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo. Mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo.
Huwag mong iasa sa iba kundi sa'yo at sa akin.
Yes, ito na nga po.
Pagbabago.
So yes, hello. Inaasahan ko po na lahat nagdaan dito, yung mga nais magtanong kay Professor Moner, tapos yung mga nais magtanong sa ating dalawa pang resource speaker, nandun na rin po sila sa kanilang mga breakout rooms. Ayun, so simulan na po natin ang Q&A portion dito sa room na ito. Kanina meron po tayong bibong anek, si Miss Leonila Sebastian. Yan. Yun. Pwede na po tayo mag-start ngayon. Ano po ang nais nilang itugon?
Teka, paano ka makakapasok sa room ko? Sa breakout?
Saan po ba sila, sir?
Nandito pa rin ako sa ano.
Andito ka pa rin po, sir. Ay, sige. Sige po, bali sabihan ko po yung mga tao. Kausap ni sir.
Paano ko papasok doon? How do I get in?
May isi-send po ako sa inyo na link. I-click niyo lamang po ito. Sige po, ito.
Okay, sir.
Tapos i-leave group. Mag-leave po kayo dito. Wait lang po.
Ito na sa ano? Ito na sa chat group.
Opo, sir. Yung for Dr. Rosana, yung for para po sa inyo.
Yun ang i-click ko.
Opo.
Sige, alis na ako.
Opo, sige po. Nakita niyo lang. Okay po. Yun po. Thank you. Ito. Yon, nakaalis na po si sir. Nakakaloka ang virtual. Ayun, pero yes, link po sana. Na-disconnect po ako, sorry. Yes, kung may mga kailangan pa po ng link, meron po ako ditong mga sinend sa inyo. Bale, i-resend ko na lang din po. Yes, for Dr. Rosana, sinend ko po ngayon. At for Dr. Nario Galase, ito rin po. Don't worry, ma-extend po yung oras natin. Ang mga technical difficulties ay given. Given po siya. Yes. Tara, simulan na po tayo dito sa room na ito.
Sir, baka pwede.
Sige po, sir. Ikaw na po mag-una.
Kasi yung mga nag-attend sa akin College of Engineering, so maganda ho yung presentation ni Ma'am Moner kung naisasama yung Peace Education. Nakalagay dito, kasi galing sa 𝐀𝐬𝐬𝐿 nung OBE. So, nangyari, practice co-designing, problem solving, workplace po to, workplace conflict, violence. So, anong pinopropose nyo yung plan? Parang outcomes ng bata sa maiksing, sa skill ng problem solving, sa maiksing 2 semesters or 1 semester pala na masisingit. Kasi meron na tayo sa environment, citizenship. So siguro we will have one day, no? One day for NSTP sa Peacebuilding. So ano sa tingin mo mga magandang proposal for outcomes para dun sa one-day course for Peacebuilding sa mga bata, lalo na preparing for work kasi college? Thank you po, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Engineer. Ano pong name nila? Engineer Valencia. All right, yeah. You're teaching sa College of Engineering po, ano?
Opo, sa URS, sa Rizal.
Oh, Rizal. Wow, interesting.
Kasi marami talagang problema sa workplace discrimination, workplace.
Yes, exactly po.
Thank you po. So kailangan may peace building process, problem solving. So ano magandang outcomes na number 1 and number 2? Sige, ma'am.
Okay. Siguro po, kasi even dito sa Mindanao, no, I mean, maraming peace educators, but we're still grappled with the idea of discrimination, no, in the workplace, no, kasi multi-ethnic nga po, diba, sa Mindanao, and I think throughout the country. One of the learning outcomes that I could possibly suggest is to increase knowledge on conflict-sensitive and peace-promoting approaches among our students. So sa conflict-sensitive and peace-promoting approaches, which is meron din pong specific module dyan, no? Isa po sa tinuturo natin is yung for example, very specific po is yung do no harm principle, no, wherein we also increase our cultural knowledge of our differences, kasi po ang source po talaga ng discrimination is prejudices, no, and yung ignorance talaga. Like pag hindi tayo familiar sa kultura, no, ng ating mga kababayan, sasabihin natin, ay ano ba yan siya, no, parang may idea kasi ng cultural superiority versus, no, versus those minority cultures, no. Kaya in peace education, yun nga po, no, na parang hindi lang siya supposedly isahang bagsak na parang isang session peace education, pero sa bawat component po actually ng common module, pag dinidiscuss natin yun sa mga estudyante natin, meron tayong warm-up exercise na kung saan minumulat natin sila, no, parang we will going to create in their new way of looking at things na be conflict sensitive, no, like dapat alamin natin yung ating cultural backgrounds ng ating mga estudyante, no, especially dahil nga sa ating mga universidad, iba-iba kasi yung pinanggalingan natin na probinsya or syudad, no, or culture. So parte din po yun. In fact, like sa disaster preparedness, for example, no, pwede tayong magtanong, ano yung mga possible halimbawa na mga culturally acceptable, no, na mga local knowledge pagdating sa mga disasters, no. And minsan yung mga estudyante pa natin yung makakapagturo nun. And another thing is, pwede din po actually to generate indigenous knowledge that will enrich the understanding of our students doon sa ating rich history, no? Particularly doon sa ating local history. And so, kasi ang peace studies, yes, it's an emerging field by its own, but it's also multidisciplinary, no? As you can see, all the concepts that we're discussing are actually from sociology, political science, history, no, mostly social sciences and law, no, the philosophy of human rights, for example. And so napaka-interesting po, no, na yung mga estudyante is you give them a simulation exercise and you give, like for example, you teach them the skill of negotiation, and that is something that you can also probably second learning outcome is apply the skill of negotiation or mediation and dialogue in terms of managing the conflicts in the workplace, or say for example, how to deal with discriminations in the workplace.
Ako, thank you, ma'am. So skill for negotiation, intermediation, saka yun nga, kasi sa engineering tsaka construction, ma'am, patayan talaga dyan.
Exactly po.
That means competition, we have to be the best, we have to kill the competitor. We cannot let in other companies enter our market. Mga ganun kasi po yun. Salamat po.
Yeah.
Naku, ang ganda. So skills of negotiation, saka intermediation, saka dialogues. Salamat
Yes,
po.
sir. You're welcome, sir.
Yes, marami po Engineer Valencia. Yes, meron pong nakataas ng kamay nila kanina. Sino po ba ang nais magtanong? Sunod?
Sir, hello po.
Ay, hello. Hello, ma'am.
Good afternoon po. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Ma'am, ano pong pangalan nila?
Leonila Sebastian, ma'am.
Ma'am Leonila.
Sebastian. Okay. From Zamboanga City po, Universidad de Zamboanga.
Hello po.
Ma'am, kasi you have mentioned kanina kasi it's very difficult kasi yung peace education kasi very broad siya, di ba? So, kasi sa school namin, ma'am, Universidad de Zamboanga, dominant kasi yung Islam student natin. So, in 100%, siguro mga 85 to 90% ang Islam student dito sa university. So, ano po kaya siguro, ma'am, yung magandang topic na tugma para sa mga estudyante namin na kasi mas dominant kasi ang Islam when it comes to peace education. Ano kaya? Kasi first time din po namin na ma-integrate din yung peace education sa NSTP sa CWTS.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ma'am Leonela. No, that's a very good question. No, and for sure, a lot of us also would like to know about how do we, for example, make use of religion, no, as something that doesn't necessarily divide, but also as a source of peace. No? Ma'am Leonela, kasi
Yes po.
no, right now in the BARM, through the Ministry of Bangsamoro higher technical education, basic, higher, and technical education, they have this very interesting program on the integration of peace education in the Madaris, no? Yung traditional religious education that is centered on Islam. And when I share that one, I received a direct message saying that hindi po ba integrated na yung peace sa Islam? So why do we have, what's the point of integrating it? No? And that's a very good point. That's a valid concern. But I think maganda po, no, one activity that you can do is basically to allow your Muslim students to share what do they think are Islamic values, which teaches the universal value of peace. And you would be surprised how they can be able to really quote verses in the Quran, because really there's a lot of verses in the Quran that basically talks about dialogue, respect to diversity, and even no compulsion in religion, right? So, you can be creative about it, but at the same time, be culturally sensitive. Like, you don't ask them, for example, okay, say for example, your Prophet Muhammad, just medyo may sensitive din, no, na ganun na yung imaging in the Islamic faith, but you can say, for example, give a scenario where like framing in the media and ask them to challenge the negative stereotype na nakikita na karamihan, like the bias, framed by the media, for example, the 9/11 attacks, how a particular cultural group is demonized, and it's, given that they're the majority in your class, you can use that as an opportunity for them. Say, for example, if you are given the platform to showcase Muslim cultures, Muslim cultures that is influenced by the religion, what are those? So sometimes, art-based peace building in the classroom is a very powerful narrative that they can, that your students can portray, like in a form of role play ba yan, storytelling, spoken poetry, or even as simple as a song, writing a poem, or meron silang kanta na gusto nilang ialay, for example, that is on the basis of how they live their faith. Pwede din po yun.
Thank you talaga, ma'am, sa input sa topic na yan kasi we really find hard kasi when it comes to teaching peace education kasi mostly on our part kasi hindi kami yung mga peace advocates talaga. So maganda yung sinabi ninyo kanina na make use of the social media, siguro doon kami magsa-start
Yes.
on,
Mhm.
yes ma'am, social media, yung mga Muslim culture. Kasi dominant talaga sa amin dito yung estudyante namin sa Islam.
Mhm.
And
Thank you, ma'am.
okay, thank you din ma'am. Thank you sir for the opportunity.
Maraming salamat din po, Ma'am Leonila. Yes po. Ay, may baby. Tama ba yung narinig ko? Meron pa po ba silang mga katanungan? Nandito pa po tayo sa ating breakout session at patuloy pa po tayo magtanong.
Dolly, I think mayroong question sa chat box.
Yes, meron
Kanina.
nga. Let me...
Hello sir, good afternoon.
Ay,
Okay.
sige po. Kayo po muna habang hinahanap natin. Sige po,
Hello
sir.
sir, this is Dr. Gumilet of 𝐷𝐵𝐴 State University, implementer of NSTP. Ma'am, as I read the 𝐶ED Memorandum Order number 1, series of 2019, it says that it is only integration. Di po ba? What if you as an advocate of peace education, pwede po kayang maging isang subject na lang siya para wag na lang integrate, kasi mas maganda sanang maituro sa mga bata as a subject po sana, not as integrated subject, di po ba? So
Yes.
is there a possibility for you as a peace educator advocate na i-propose sa 𝐶ED para mas matatag at mas maganda yung outcome? Kasi kung i-integrate lang po natin, parang konti lang, limited lang kasi kapag integrated, ma'am, di ba?
Yeah.
So may I suggest to you, ma'am, as a advocate of peace education, na baka mas magandang gawing separate as a full or a full subject po sana itong peace education. There's a possibility po.
Yes, sir. Sir, your name again, sir?
Gail Gumilet po, Gail.
Okay,
Mail po
Dr.
ako, ma'am.
Gail. Yes, sir. Dr. Gail, thank you so much for that. No, I think it's pretty much possible because, like, for public university po ba kayo nagtuturo?
Yes, ma'am. SUK po kami, SUK.
So, and like in the MSU system, since 2018, through a BOR resolution, we are we have a 3-unit course on peace education. We call it FPE 101, Fundamentals of Peace Education. So it's required by all students of the university. It's a general education course. So on top of the integration of peace in our NSTP subject, which is basically a 2-semester course, we are also having this 3-unit course. And we proposed it through a BOR resolution. So yes, we can do that, sir. I think we are also, the 𝐶ED is also in the process of drafting the national framework for peace studies. And yeah, it would be great actually if we have that institutionalization of peace education across all HAIs, both public and private. So it would really become part of the offering, and not just integration, because as mentioned by Dr. Rosana kanina, it's a very broad discipline. And if we just integrate it in the common module na very limited din yung time, hindi siya parang hilaw, yung appreciation ng mga students. But if we have a separate course for that, it would supplement yung kanilang knowledge. But in that, thank you for mentioning that, Doc Gail. Actually, the CMO of 𝐶ED talks about not just integration in the NSTP, but all the courses, including the natural sciences, should have a component of peace education. So, yun nga, sir, parang when we talk about peace ed, it's more than just a subject by itself, but it's really more on how do we integrate the value of peace, the pedagogies of teaching. Like, for example, in terms of handling our classroom, are we allowing a free flow of information, or we're just kind of, like some students would say, there's practice of favoritism. There has to also be a revisiting of how we handle it, or like our usual traditional grading system is that there's a ranking system rather than promoting the social relationships where there's bonding and development of camaraderie and teamwork, we have to reset our assessment system, that our students wouldn't be obsessed with being the #1 in class, rather like, okay, I was able to help my classmate, like I'm struggling and I could relate that my classmate too is struggling. Like they found a support system with each other, especially now with the remote teaching. And I think that's something that we could also explore as peace educators, sir. I hope I answer your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Kasi just want to support the statement of Madam kanina, yung sinundan ko pong nagtanong, kasi mahirap din po kasi sa amin na hindi acquainted doon sa peace education subjects or content of that curriculum, kasi hindi naman po talaga kami teacher ng social science or social studies or humanities, kasi mas mahirap po kasi sa aming part na hindi kami teacher ng ganung subjects. So it is better po sana if this education should be a full and a single subject, not only integration, especially in the NSTP, because in the NSTP, kahit hindi ka teacher ng social studies or humanities, if the director or the school appointed you as a implementer, so mapipilitan ka talagang mag-discuss dito sa peace education. So meron na rin po, nagkaroon na rin po, I think, ng training about peace education, and 2 or 3 of my colleagues attended the training. Yun nga lang po, hindi sila implementer ng NSTP. So parang mas maganda po sana talaga, dahil naumpisan nyo na po sa school nyo, ma'am, na nag-offer kayo ng 3 unit subjects. Subject na peace education. So we can propose this also if you in your kind indulgence, ma'am, na pwedeng makuha yung proposal nyo, so that we can also propose to our BOR na i-offer itong 3 unit subject, even kahit man lang sana elective, kasi may mga estudyante talaga na hindi naman natin mapipilit na kunin nyo to. So we have subject na elective sana kung maaari po. So yun lang po, ma'am. Thank you very much for the very nice answer.
Thank you, sir. I posted my email address so I can share that document with you, sir. That's your reference.
Thank you po.
Okay.
Sige po. May nag-raise hand kanina, Sir Arnold. Yes po.
Yeah.
Kasi since nga 1 hour or 2 hours madadagdag o integration, maybe UP and you, Ma'am Moner, tsaka yung may research na kasama si Sir Rosana, makuha talaga yung political conflict, yung source of conflicts ng, kunyari sa South, secessionist ba? Sa NDF, control ba ng control, political control? Kasi para makuha ng bata na may research na hindi opinion but na-establish ano talaga yung root causes, so the student can formulate their philosophy, and then sabi sa work sa outcomes, magkaroon sila ng capability for workflow process on how to deal with such thing if it emanates in the workplace. So like for example, ano talaga yung conflict ng Muslim at Christian, ano talaga yung conflict ng Abu Sayyaf, ano talaga yun. So hindi na establish, so people sabi may gulo, pero ano talaga yung gusto ng kabilang party, because if it's secessionist or ang tawag nila yung to undermine the government and to seek control, meron nung talagang na dyan, may outcomes na talaga dyan. So kailangan maintindihan ng bata, hindi natin i-hide sa kanila yung totoong causes na pinagsimulan ng conflict, then let them now have the outcomes na they practice negotiation, mga ganon. So ano talagang tamang paraan? So wala tayo, I'm not taking side, we're not taking side as teachers, but we have to know what are the root causes and what are the, antag nila, yung kanilang demands. No? Especially demands, ma'am, ng labor, parating merong labor group and management group. So mga ganon, di ba? Mga transgroup group. So mga ganon, so that means kasama na yun sa peace. And then nasa trabaho ng engineer talaga. Tulad ko, pinapadala ko minsan ng kumpanya. Pakisettle mo nga yung picket doon. Ano yung demanda ng mga CBA doon? Ayan. Salamat po, ma'am.
Yes, maraming salamat din po, Sir Valencia. Actually, meron din po nagre-raise ng hand kanina, si Sir Arnulfo Capili. Nais niyo po bang ituloy ang inyong katanungan, Sir Arnulfo?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Can you hear me loud and clear, sir?
Yes po, loud and clear po, sir.
Sir, thank you very much. Mr. Capili from Benguet State University, main campus, La Trinidad, Benguet.
Hello, hello po.
So this is Mr. Capili from Benguet State University.
Yes
Hello
po,
po,
sir. Hi, Sir
Okay,
Capili.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes,
Ma'am, thank
we're
you so much for the very insightful lecture that you have provided. And then I am so happy to hear that you made mention about the integration of peace education in various subject areas. Ma'am, this is my question. Not all of us teachers are trained to integrate peace education. One of the least that we can do, the least that we can ask from you is, do you have any module? Since we cannot, trainings are not provided right now, one of the things that we need, siguro ma'am, we ask from you is, one is a training for all those who are involved in teaching peace education. Second is how to integrate peace education in the curriculum, and then training for those topics. But the least that we can ask from now is, do you have any modules, any written document that would guide us, that would assist us in the integration of peace education in various subjects? We are not that familiar po kasi if we have these documents or modules that we can use, so that this would be of great help to us teachers in integrating peace education, because we are more than interested and more than willing to integrate peace education in our subjects. But the problem is we lack the know-how. We really do not know how to do it. We have a little knowledge of doing it, but if you can help us by providing us documents or modules, it would be of great help. Thank you so much, ma'am, and then sir.
Hello po, hello po. Nawala po si Ma'am Moner. Kasi, tama po ba? Hindi ko na po, bigla po siyang nawala dito. Ma'am Moner, nandito po ba sila? Ay, baka na-disconnect.
Maganda po, sir, yung module o i-integrate.
Opo, sir. Ay, yan po. Hello po, hello po. Sige, bali, i-recap lang.
Sir Capili, can you repeat the question?
Bali,
because I got disconnected po.
Okay lang po, ito po, bali parang may synthesis, marami rin po, medyo common po yung katanungan eh. So bali, do you have common modules that is already integrated with peace education po? Parang to the same effect na din po yung tanong.
Okay, yes, we do have that, except that because we have not really applied for a copyright, I'm afraid that I have to seek permission from the authors themselves to be able to share those. But we are in the process of getting the copyright for our conflict-sensitive and peace-promoting module that we have in the IPDM, and it's really a module that has practical what do you call this, no, that is practical in application, na ma-appreciate po siya anuman yung college, no, anuman yung health sciences, natural science, hindi lang po siya social sciences. But yes, we do have that. In fact, nakakatuwa po na mention ni Dr. Rosana, because it was really through Dr. De Leon when he was still the president of the MSU system that really started, no, that incorporation or the integration of peace education in the NSTP. And in fact, there are really skills-based module, no? Like, of course, students have to learn nonviolent communication, skills in active listening, effective communication. So iba-iba po yan. And this is practical module that we can integrate when we do disaster preparedness, no? So it's a matter of really being creative, no, in a way that we can, all the common module pwede po natin masama, no, si peace education, kasi nga po alam natin na napaka-broad din po niya, pero pag merong common module, no, or merong module na practical application, kasi yun nga, peace building is also about learning the skills by itself, and so this could also be something that we can continue to work on for, and I hope that the NSTP Diliman would also be able to share more about this. But yeah, I cannot promise anything, but there's really the move by 𝐁 to really train more educators to be able to in terms of like peace education and how to really integrate that, because tama po kayo, no, mahirap po talaga i-integrate kapag wala po tayong leveling off, no, on how to of integrating peace ed in our courses. So maraming salamat po.
Yes, ito magla-last question na lang po tayo dahil nakabalik na po yung ibang mga breakout room. So, bale ito po kay Miss Sheila 42. Hello po. Hello po, Ma'am Sheila. Maaari na po kayong magtanong.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon po.
Hello po, Ma'am Sheila.
From Colegio San Agustin, Bacolod. So, actually, this is not a question. So this is just a sharing of what we are actually doing in NSTP. So we had our strat plan actually previously before the start of our class this semester as to how we gonna integrate peace education in NSTP, because we really had decided that this would be part now of our common module. So for the time being, because you did mention about the preparation of the module on peace education, which somehow we are not certain as to when it will be issued and released, no, until that we would be able to have the same time, no, while the training for this purpose is still being planned as to when to be done. So we do not want to fall short the learning that our students now would like to learn in NSTP. So instead, we, the teacher facilitators in the NSTP program, decided to tap experts, no, that will have to give a talk on education. So that is what we had decided and planned out for the time being, that we are not ready, for the time being that we are not prepared, no, for the time being that certainly there's so much to be learned on our part. Okay, ma'am, so that's it. No, we will be tapping experts that will give a talk on peace education to our students, no, in such a way that they will not fall short of the learning in NSTP. Thank you, and good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon at maraming salamat din po. Ayun, so marami actually nagre-request ng module. Nabanggit nga ni Professor Moner na ito po ay may mga ilang pong units na meron po, pero pinag-uusapan pa para ma-standardize ba yung module natin. So kailangan pa muna yun ng maigting na pag-aaral at mga proseso para po tayo ay magkaroon ng standard na module para sa Peacebuilding.
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance po. Yes. Pasensya na po dahil mayroon na lang tayong 0 minutes na natitira para sa ating question and answer portion ngayong hapon.
Sir, ano mangyari pag may module doon sa copyright? Kasi we have to respect copyrights of people who produce the module. Like ako, binayaran na ako ng 40,000 na eskwelahan ko dahil sa mga modules ko. So ano ho yun? We will respect the copyright of the authors. Thank you po.
Yung proseso, yung specific na proseso po niya, opo, may copyright po yan. Pero kapag naman pong na-standardize or nanggaling po sa isang institution katulad ng 𝐶ED or ng DepEd, magkakaroon po yan ng parang proprietorship na pagmamayari ng state mismo. So, as regards sa copyright, parang hindi ata ko yung tamang tanongin. Pero, yes.
Yes, and allow me to do a shameless plug muna, Dolly.
Go po.
Because yeah. I think that most of the books on peace ed is like from Western scholars, no? And peace building also is something where we value the local resources. We just recently got a hold of our complimentary copy for a book that I contributed to that. Our chapter contribution alongside my colleagues in MSU IAT is entitled Theories and Practice in Inclusive Peace Building, the case of Bangsamoro. So and there's all of the authors are actually from Mindanao. And there's also from UP Diliman, no? So probably I'll ask MSU's Marawi, because they're the publisher of that, if it could be for circulation, because that's I think that would be one good source for modules in terms of peace ed. Kasi po, my case studies on peace, no? And it's really something na yung sinasabi ninyo na peace processes, no? Kailangan pag-usapan, ano ba itong mga parallel peace processes na kinakandak ng gobyerno natin, hindi lamang po sa Bangsamoro. Meron din localized peace talks with the CPP and NDF, and I think we need to raise the bar of the discourse, no, that we have. Like, okay, what is there's probably overemphasis on the anti-terror law, for example, but peace educators, I think it's also our job to do peace researches that will also inform the public about this parallel localized peace talks that is happening in our communities. And really, we have to counterbalance so much of negativity that we have right now, especially with the securitized approach to the pandemic. And I don't want to sound so political about it, but really, a peace process is also political. So it's up to us to really kind of mainstream it, regardless of our political leaning and biases. But bottom line is that peace building is really about opening, sharing spaces, and not to cancel each other in the process. It's really allowing information so that we have an informed, and as you said, evidence-based and research-based, judgments about our conflicts, so that we can move forward and we don't get stuck with the very world of social media. So that's really a challenge, but it can be done.
Yes, maraming salamat. Thank you po dun sa yung mga sinabi, Professor Moner. Yes, last question na lang po tayo, or last suggestion, violent reaction or non-violent reactions more of. So yes, meron pa po tayong Engineer Valencia. Nagre-raise po ba kayo ng hand or?
Sorry, hindi po. Tapos
hindi.
Nakadalawa na ako.
Sige po. Bigyan naman natin din ang chance ang iba. So meron tayong mga iilan. Kung nais po nyo magsalita, raise nyo lang po yung hand. Pero meron po tayo ditong tanong na i-chat nung early. Meron tayong isa. Hello, Sir Kaspa?
There's someone who raised his hand, Dolly. Si Adrian Kasapao.
Adrian Kasapao. Hello
po.
Hello po.
Hi,
Ano na
Adrian.
lang po. Parang may tanong lang po ako about sa point of view po ng mga peace educators po. Kasi po, based po sa mga na-experience ko tapos nakita ko po, since po nung na-elect po si President Duterte, nauso po ang tokhang and marami po ang namatay. Then sinabi niya naman po sa isang interview niya na papatayin niya yung anak niya kapag alam niya pong nag-use o nagtutulak ng droga. Doon po sa ginawa ni Duterte na sa paraan niya po, sa tingin niyo po, kasi po di ba ang sabi niyo, opposite po ng peace is violence. Pero sa pinapakita po ng presidents natin, he used violence just to gain changes or peace po. So ano po kayang point of view niyo po doon? Peace of plan po kaya doon? Or peace way? Or ewan ko po, ano pong point of view niyo po doon, ma'am?
Okay, thank you, Adrian. What an interesting times. And for us peace educators, it's very hard to even talk about human rights in the current political climate. And perhaps the sitting president is a manifestation of how we can do selective justice, or we can do double speak, in terms of like selective outrage, like kailangan kasi talaga nating tingnan yung structural violence in our society and the president attitude, hindi lamang yung idea nung it's so easy for him to say, "I'll kill you," right? He's a very intolerable and unacceptable remarks against women, no? Like rape jokes, for example. You cannot do that, no? And despite that, he's still very popular and populist, no? Like he still speak the voices of the massa. I think that as peace educators, that should fuel us to really choose our leaders, no? That is also peace advocates. No, so clearly, I don't think, kaya nga po I don't think that we are all entitled to our political judgments about him. Well, I am critical of the president. I respect the presidency, but I have a lot of opposition against his war on drug policy and his misogynistic attitudes, and generally, his consistent inconsistency with all the policies that have been to. I mean, he's really a manifestation of a grandstanding politician, no? That over promises but under delivers. I will eliminate drugs in 6 months. Of course, we know that's just in movies, right? But in real life, you cannot eliminate drug because it's an international crime, right? It's an international trade. And hindi lamang siya dito sa Pilipinas. And so obviously, we need to really be able to have a holistic, no, approach rather than patayin natin yung mga drug addicts, no? And really, this is a challenge for us. 2022 elections is coming, and I think that we have to also ask our upcoming candidates filing na sa October next month. Let's ask them, what's your agenda for peace and security? It should be beyond militaristic solution to conflict in Mindanao, or to conflict with the longest communist insurgency in the country. And it's not just because nobody wants to be violent. Nobody wants to go to the jungle, sacrificing their lives as free human beings, and as pointed out by Dr. Rosana, living our lives, but then because they are really fighting for social justice, and we have to understand that. We even have to question the street tagging and all, because we are citizens and we must be protected by the state, not being labeled as unnecessary enemies of the state, no? So this whole paradigm right now that we're experiencing, sige lang, hindi naman siya forever na andyan, walang forever. And so I challenge each and everyone here to really choose peace advocates, political leaders in the next election. Thank you, Dali. Back to you.
Yes sa lahat ng iyon. Maraming salamat, Professor
Ma'am
Monet.
and Sir po. Sobrang knowledgeable po nun para sa akin po at para sa lahat. Ang laki po ng natutunan namin doon. Ang laki po ng nakuha naming advice galing sa inyo po. Very thank you po.
Yes. Maraming salamat din, Adrian, sa iyong pagsali at iyong pagtanong. Ayun, so bali nakabalik na rin po ang ating dalawang speakers mula sa kanilang breakout rooms. So yes, kompleto na po ulit tayo. Ayun. Kung may mga katanungan po kayo sa ating mga speakers, na pwede naman po nila iwan ang kanilang email address. Tama po ba, Professor Moner? Yes, dadalog naman po sila sa mga question nyo kapag sa email. Yes. Yon, bale, ito na po. Ngayon nakabalik na po ang ating mga speakers para sa huling pagkakataon ngayong hapon. Nais lang namin makarinig ng parting words ba mula sa ating mga speakers na maririnig na rin ng buong participants natin dito. So yes, kahit sino na po sa inyo, Dr. Herbert, Dr. Hasmin, Professor Moner. Mga parting words lang. Hello po.
Siguro this time, Jolly, gentleman first.
Gentleman first. Sige po. Dr. Herbert, simulan po natin sa inyo, Dr. Rosana. Ano po ang mga nais niyong bitawang mga salita para sa mga manonood natin ngayong hapon? Dr. Herbert? Dr. Herbert? Ayun, mukhang may pinagdadaanan po muna technically si Dr. Herbert. So, tungo na tayo kay Dr. Hasmin. May nais po ba kayong iwang mga salita sa ating mga participants and viewers?
I think probably people were overwhelmed, by the hugeness, of peace. But I just want to echo a quote, from Lao Tzu, a philosopher who said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So sana po after this webinar, you'll take that first step so that we'll get to that vision of peace that we are all hoping for. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Jasmine. Professor Muner, kayo po.
Thank you so much, Dolly and Ma'am Hasmin. I think I always share, my journey as a peace advocate and as a peace educator is very much influenced by my faith, and I always share, with my fellow citizens whenever I am invited to do this co-learning session. Now, one of the verses in the Quran, it's in Surah, it's in the verses of the Quran that says, we are created into nations and tribes, and we come from different nationalities, ethnicities, religions. Not that we will despise one another, but so that we come to know one another. And so that's a very beautiful verse in the Quran that says, diversity is beautiful, that it's despite all the different colors and sizes and shape, love yourself. And because when you are secure, when you love yourself, you can love one another. And I think that in this very insecure world, we need to really be grateful and extend that gratefulness by dialogue and extending our love for one another, and not seeing those who do not belong to our religion or to our tribe as the other, but as indivisible part of the human family. So let's stay in touch and be an advocate of peace. Kapayapaan po sa ating lahat.
Yes. Maraming salamat, Professor Muner, sa iyong nakakaantig pusong chika. Sa inyo lahat actually sobrang naantig. Kaya nandito nga sa chat box, ang daming nagpapasalamat din. Marami daw silang natutunan at totoo naman din po talaga. Maraming salamat sa mga naibahagi nyo ngayong hapon. Si Dr. Herbert po ay kasalukuyang nagkakaroon ata ng technical difficulty. Pero yes, pinapasalamatan din natin si Doc dahil sa kanyang napakabuluhang mensahe sa kanyang lecture. Okay po, so move na rin tayo sa ating certificates, presentation ng ating certificate sa ating mga speakers. Yes, kasi of course, pinapasalamatan natin sila dahil sa kanilang oras, sa kanilang research, sa kanilang mga talento, talino at marami pang iba. So yes, unang-una, tawagan po natin si Professor Yasmira P. Muner para po gawaran nitong Certificate of Appreciation. So yes, so this Certificate of Appreciation is hereby awarded to Yasmira P. Muner for her active participation as a resource person in the webinar Kapayapaan, Peace Education and the Role of NSTP in Peacebuilding, giving this 24th day of September 2021 via Zoom. Yeah, so Professor, maraming salamat po sa inyong mga binahagi, sa inyong mga basta maraming salamat. Ang hirap magpasalamat lagi, pero ang dami kasi talagang nabigay. So ang dami rin kailangan pasalamatan. Dahil of course magiging wave to eh. May mangyayaring mga pagbabago soon enough. So ito, photo op po tayo. Miss Muner, yes. Kung nakikita niyo po yung YouTube live monitor, yan po tayo. Sige. Photo op.
Okay, ready po?
Ready?
1, 2, 3.
Ayun. Kami pa lang po yun ni Miss Muner. Pero okay naman po yan. Magsimula na po tayo magpakita kasi magpo-photo op din po tayo soon. Sige po, para sa ating pangalawang speaker, Dr. Herbert B. Rosana. Yes, tinatawagan po namin si Dr. Herbert B. Rosana para gawaran ng Certificate of Appreciation. So muli, itong Certificate of Appreciation ay ginagawad namin kay Herbert B. Rosana, PhD, para sa kanyang active participation dito sa webinar ngayong araw na ito, September 2021 via Zoom. So, hello, maraming salamat po Dr. Herbert. And mag-photo op din po tayo.
Welcome.
1, 2, 3.
May photo po, sir.
1,
Opo.
2, 3. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Herbert.
Welcome.
Virtual palakpakan naman tayo, guys, sa ating mga speakers. Kung paano man ang virtual palakpakan, ganun ata, or erase hand na lang natin. Yes. And certainly, last but certainly not the least, tinatawagan po namin si Dr. 𝐷𝐸𝐻 Yes, para naman po gawaran ng ating Certificate of Appreciation. So yes, virtual palakpakan para magpakita ng gratitude sa ating mga speakers. This Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to 𝐷𝐸𝐻 for her active participation as a resource person in this webinar. Kapayapaan, Peace Education, and the role of NSTP in peace building, given this 24th day of September 2021. Thank you so much, Dr. 𝐷𝐸𝐻.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you very much too.
Yes, it was an honor na mapakinggan lahat ng mga binahagi niyo po. Yes, virtual palakpakan naman tayo, guys. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. So ito na nga, para since official natin binuksan ang ating webinar, official na rin nating sasarahan. Mamaya po tayo mag-photo op as a whole, pero para official na isarado po ang ating webinar na ito ngayong hapon, tinatawagan ko po ang isang representante mula sa Commission on Higher Education, si Ms. Cynthia Hernandez.
Maraming salamat, Dolly.
Thank you din po.
A pleasant afternoon to everyone here today. Thank you for inviting the Commission through the Office of Student Development and Services to this webinar entitled Kapayapaan, Peace Education and the Role of the NSTP in Peace Building. The Commission on Higher Education is mandated to promote quality higher education, ensure that education shall be accessible to all, and ensure and protect academic freedom for intellectual growth, advancement of research, and education of high-level professionals. Currently, the Commission, through the Office of Student Development and Services, is in the process of enhancing the implementation of the NSTP, and the OSDS has started the development of the NSTP guidelines and revision of the minimum standard for the NSTP common and specific modules, which shall be undertaken for 1 academic year or 2 semesters in coordination with the government agencies or offices and non-government organizations such as TESDA, DND, Senate Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, House Committee on Higher Technical Education, NICA or the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, the National Youth Commission, the PASUC, the ALCU, the Alcalam Ateneo de Davao University, the Cotabato City State Polytechnic University, 𝘂𝐬𝐿, and NSTP Office, UP Diliman, in order to enhance and align the topics to what the society necessitated. The Commission has also issued various initiatives and memorandum orders that would complement or align with the purpose of the NSTP, like CMO 26 series of 2005 Program of Instruction on Values Formation, integration of environmental education in the tertiary education curriculum, guidelines and procedures on the issuance of National Service Training Program serial numbers, and recently the CMO number 1 series of 2019, the integration of peace studies education into the relevant higher education curricula. The 𝐀ED and NYC, or the National Youth Commission, also issued jointly Joint Memorandum Circular Number 1, Series of 2019, or the guidelines for the exemption of SK officials from taking the NSTP CWTS in accordance with Section 16, Number 2 of RA 10742. The updates on the development of NSTP implementing guidelines and minimum standards of NSTP modules. The 𝐀ED through the Commission and Bank approved the composition of the NSTP TWG and resource persons, the terms of reference and the timeline of activities of the technical work group, tasked to craft and develop the NSTP module with contents related to the national security issues and concerns. The composition of NSTP TWG was being added with representatives from the National Security Council and National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, the NTF-𝐿CAC, as members, and the Philippine Society of NSTP Educators was transferred as technical work group members instead of as a resource person. It is also added in the terms of reference of the said TWG to include the development of contents for topics with dearth of materials such as national unity, student development, volunteerism, peace education, and sustainable development goals. The NSTP Technical Work Group and Resource Person shall continue the enhancement of the draft NSTP guidelines and inclusion of military component in the said guidelines, and to finalize the NSTP2 modules for the approval of the Commission. Last May 25 to 27, 2021, the OSDS and the PISNE conducted the webinar training on the dimensions of development. Under the COVID-19 pandemic issues and problems, NSTP is often associated to community immersion, mass gathering, and close person-to-person contact. Because of its nature, there were concerns raised on how it can be implemented in academic year 2020 amid the COVID-19 pandemic or crisis. And to address these issues, the OSDS conducted meetings of the NSTP to convert the traditional method of teaching into a flexible learning methodology. It was followed by a series of webinars by orienting the 𝐀ED the approved guidelines on flexible learning and introducing flexible learning training for NSTP faculty members. As of this date, the revised NSTP IRR is for concurrence of 𝐀ED and to be scheduled for signing of the tripartite agencies, the DND, 𝐀ED, and TESDA, and 𝐀ED to proceed also with the finalization and issuance of the NSTP guidelines and also the issuance of the NSTP2 revised common and specific modules. With this, we would like to thank you, the UP Diliman official, Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Maria Teresa Payong-Ayong, NSTP Office Official, Office Director, Professor Dennis Kilala, and staff for sponsoring this event, and to the resource persons, Assistant Professor Yasmi Ramoner, Dr. Herbert Rosana, and Dr. Jasmine Nario Galase for sharing of knowledge, experience, and time in this informative and timely webinar. And of course, to all the participants from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao for attending. Have a blessed day, everyone. Stay safe and well.
Stay safe and well din po, Miss Cynthia Hernandez. Yes, maraming salamat sa inyo guys. Maraming salamat, Ma'am Cynthia, sa inyong parting words. At ito na ang portion ng photos. Yes. So kasama na po tayo lahat. So inaanyayahan ko po kayo na mag-open ng cam open ang camera ang bawat isa sa atin para po sa ating photo op. Yes, marami nga nagpapasalamat mula sa kanilang mga institusyon. Meron dito University of Science and Technology in Southern Philippines, from ISPSC, University Perpetual Help System, Delta, Calamba. Yes, napakarami po talaga natin ngayon. So yes, okay na po ba? Naka-open na po cam ng karamihan. Per page, bale, mahaba-haba po to, tapos per page po natin siya gagawin. Okay po? Sige. Pero yung per page, medyo randomly scattered siya, so wala rin tayo assurance, no? So smile po tayo for 1 minute.
Okay, ready po.
Sige po. First page. Oh, nag-smile din ako. Okay po, second page. Yes po, okay na po ba ang second page? Okay po, move tayo sa third page. Smile lang po.
Third page, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay po, next.
Okay po, next page.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay po.
Isa pang page. Or, okay na po ba? Ating photographer.
Fifth page, ready? 1, 2, 3. Next page. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, next page po.
Ay, mahaba-haba nga. Go lang, go. Smile lang po tayo.
Okay, last page.
Ayun, last page. O, huling bira na ng ligaya.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay na po.
Ayun, maraming salamat everyone! At syempre dahil nabanggit ko nung sa simula na meron tayong evaluation form, ipapakita ko sa inyo yung form na yun now na mismo. So flash screen po ang form. Yes, meron po tayong evaluation form. Of course, thank you. Ilang beses natin yung sinabi ngayong gabi, ay ngayong hapon na ito. So maraming salamat. At ngayon humihingi na rin kami ng inyong tulong dahil through this evaluation form ay malalaman po namin kung gaano po kami kahusay. Ganun po. Pero meron pong deadline itong evaluation form natin. So ang evaluation form lang po ay hanggang next week, Wednesday, September 29 ng 5 p.m. So yes, kopyahin nyo lamang po ang link na ito, itong bit.ly link ng Kapayapaan Evaluation Form para po kayo rin ay mabigyan through email ng inyong Certificate of Participation. Okay po? Okay, yes. So yes, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful afternoon. Maraming salamat sa pagbigay ng almost 3 hours of your lives sa atin. Opo.
Sino yan?
Yes po. Sige, maraming salamat po. This has been Kapayapaan. Siyempre, pabanggitin natin ang first. Kapayapaan, Peace Education and the Role of NSTP in Peacebuilding. So yes, virtual palakpakan tayo na may kasamang virtual hiyawan. Woo! This has been Dolly Dollet, your host for this afternoon's event. Maraming salamat and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you very much po. Bye-bye po.
Bye-bye, sir.
Thank you po.
Bye.
So much, sir.
Thank you po.
Thank you so much po.
Thank you po, everyone. Thank you, Sir Dali.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Sa pagsagot ng tanong ko kanina, ma'am, thank you po sa lahat.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Ma'am Jasmine.
Thank you po.
Ng ating mga buhay, tayo'y magsama-sama. Yang liwanag ang daan, maging gabay sa lipunan, kailangan ng iyong kamay.
Thank you po. Thank you, everyone.
Halika voice ko at iska.
Taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo. Ang armas mo ay ang iyong natutunan laban sa karahasan. Ang iyong sandata ay serbisyong sa sakip sa mamamayan.
Thank you very much,
Mula sa
sir.
kayapan, halika na, kapwa
Thank you po.
mandirigma. Magtagumpay ka, voice ko at iska. Taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay taas kamay ang mga bagong bayani, sa harap ng pagsubok, huwag kang susuko. Bigyan ng boses ang sigaw ng masa, ang bagong pag-asa ay, ang bagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo. Panibagong pag-asa ay mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo, mula sa'yo.
Umiasa sa iba kundi sa'yo at sa akin ang simula ng